Chapter 47. In the evening, the old madam and the Lin clan entered the manor. Yu Xiang had already prepared dinner and was waiting in the side hall. Yu Pinyin had also returned and was playing with his sister's hand. His deep eyes revealed an imperceptible gentleness. "Let's have dinner together." The old madam looked at the Lin clan. "Thank you, mother. I'll go back and eat by myself." The Lin clan was so angry that they couldn't eat when they saw Yu Xiang. Fortunately, their daughter would be back soon. In the future, there would be someone to accompany her no matter what she did. The old madam was just being polite. If she really agreed, she would feel uncomfortable. She didn't ask her to stay and waved her away. "Old ancestor, where did you take mother today? She looked very happy. I haven't seen her smile in 14 years. Yu Xiang smiled brightly at the old madam. Her black and white cat eyes sparkled. When the old madam saw her granddaughter's tender and beautiful face, her heart felt like it was filled with a bucket of honey. She walked over and patted the top of her head. She jokingly said, "You haven't seen her in 14 years? Could it be that this little girl started remembering things the moment she was born? You're really the reincarnation of a spiritual child." "Maybe I'm really one. Old ancestor, hurry up and eat. Don't let the skewers get cold." Yu Xiang gestured for the servants to serve the rice. The old madam believed her granddaughter's words based on her intelligence. She couldn't help but smile even more happily. The atmosphere when the three of them gathered together was indeed different. Even the air was filled with joy. Mama Ma attentively served them food and then left with a smile. After seeing the Lin clans and Miss Miao Chi's sad faces for so long, her heart was already flustered. She still needed to look at Miss Xiang or more to wash her eyes. The old madam picked up a piece of roast goose for her granddaughter and slowly said, "Xiang, I have something to tell you. It's here." Yu Xiang picked up Yu Pinyin's wine cup and took a sip. Her cat eyes widened as she looked over. She looked innocent and cute. The old madam smiled before saying anything. She touched her soft cheeks and said, "Xiang, you actually have a twin sister." Yu Pinyin put down her chopsticks, took the wine glass from her sister, and filled it to the brim. She downed the wine in one gulp, then refilled half the glass and stuffed it back into her sister's hand. Her expression was indifferent, as if what the old lady had announced was just a trivial matter. Yu Xiang's round cat eyes widened in an instant. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and surprise. "I actually have an older sister? But why hadn't she lived at home for 14 years? Where is she now? Why didn't you tell me?" The old lady patted her back and continued, "Because her horoscope was very weak and she could die at any time, the old ancestor had no choice but to send her to the nunnery for foster care. Not only did they not tell you, other than your mother and brother, no one else in the residence knew. They were afraid that if they said too much, the ghosts and gods would find your sister and bring her to hell. You see, 14 years have passed, and her death tribulation has been resolved, so my sister is coming back." Yu Xiang's face revealed a joyful expression, but she was not happy in her heart. Whenever she thought about how the main character would compete with her for her brother's attention and love, her heart would be filled with a little worm called jealousy, nibbling away at her rationality bit by bit. Fortunately, the Marquis household did not intend to let the family shun take her back. Instead, they hid the main character's past from her. Although she was still thinking about the main character's future, she still felt a little relieved. It wasn't that she was reluctant to leave the Marquis household, but she was reluctant to part with her brother. Thinking of this, she unconsciously leaned over and tightly hugged Yu Pinyin's arm, rubbing her cheek against it longingly. Yu Pinyin smiled, holding her hand that was holding the wine glass, and fed himself a sip. The old madam had long been accustomed to the two's intimate actions. She nodded and said, "Yes, the end of this month is an auspicious day. I'm preparing to take her back. Then I'll immediately have someone clean up the courtyard." Yu Xiang turned to look at Lulu, but was stopped by the old madam. "No need, just let her live with your mother. There's no need to prepare anything." If it weren't for the fact that taking her back could make the Lin clan calm down, the old madam would still be hesitating. Yu Xiang didn't say much. She shook her brother's arm and asked, "Brother, have you seen my sister? What's her personality like? Is she easy to get along with?" Yu Pinyin fed her a sip of wine, his gaze lingering on her moist, full, and tender lips for a long time. His voice was slightly hoarse. I've only seen her twice. She has a cold temperament and holds grudges but not gratitude. You should stay away from her in the future to avoid being schemed against. Yu Xiang couldn't help but look surprised. Yu Pinyin had only met her twice, yet he gave her such a low evaluation. She didn't know what the main character had done. But what did this have to do with her? It was enough as long as her brother didn't like her and only liked her. Yu Xiang narrowed her eyes and snickered. She lovingly rubbed against her brother's arm and obediently said, I understand. The old madam continued to pick up food, as if she hadn't heard her grandson's straightforward words. In fact, she was secretly nodding in her heart. Cold temperament and holds grudges but not gratitude. These words summed it up very well. Wasn't that exactly the case? Forget it. In any case, she was still the descendant of the family Yu. After bringing her back, she could live a good life for a few years and then find someone with a similarly tough life to marry. She could also be given a generous dowry to ensure her safety and smoothness for the rest of her life. After dinner, the old madam summoned the members of the Lin clan, Yu Siyu and all the stewards. She then announced on the spot that the family Yu and a legitimate daughter had been fostered outside. Everyone was very surprised. After looking at each other, there was an uproar. Yu Siyu also followed the crowd and put on a startled expression. In fact, her gaze was constantly on Yu Xiang's face, and she seemed to be rejoicing in her misfortune. The members of the Lin clan counted on their fingers. There were still more than 10 days until the end of the month. They immediately objected, Mother. Why must we only bring her back at the end of the month? Can't we go tomorrow? Tomorrow isn't an auspicious day. It's forbidden to go out and marry. If you want your daughter to run into bad luck, then go ahead and bring her back. The old madam closed her eyes and waved her hand. She didn't want to see the Lin clan's mournful faces. The Lin clan was very concerned about their daughter's safety. Even if it was something without a trace, they didn't dare to interfere. They pursed their lips and didn't say anything. Yu Pinyin sneered and glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. The old madam then instructed the stewards to pass on the news to the servants, so that they wouldn't make a fuss before the end of the month. She then waved her hand and dismissed everyone. When the Lin clan saw Yu Pinyin bend down to carry Yu Xiang away, his movements indescribably gentle and affectionate, their originally unhappy mood became even more gloomy. They raised their voice and said, Yana, stay here. Mother has something to discuss with you. Yu Pinyin ignored them. He held his younger sister and weighed her. When he saw her giggle, he curled his lips and walked out. Yenner, you won't listen to mother's words anymore, will you? How can you be so disobedient and unfilial? The Lin clan trembled with anger. When her daughter returned, it was as if she had suddenly woken up. She opened her eyes and observed the world around her. Her son's attitude towards her could no longer be described as cold and distant. It was even more chilling. He was turning a blind eye to her. In his eyes, she didn't exist, nor did his biological younger sister exist. He only saw the old madam and Yu Xiang. The old madam was fine. After all, she was his biological grandmother. But what was Yu Xiang? She was a bastard and a jinx. How could she have the right to share her daughter's love? The Lin clan desperately wanted their son to know who he should truly care about. Older brother, stay here and listen to what she wants to say. Yu Xiang whispered into Yu Pinyin's ear. Yu Pinyin took 2 more steps forward. When his younger sister used her fingertips to lightly poke his chest, he smiled and placed her in the wheelchair. He repeatedly reminded Tao Hong and Lu Lu to take care of her carefully. Everyone left the main hall. Yu Pinyin sat next to the old madam, who was resting with her eyes closed. He asked, "What do you want to say?" The Lin clan first poured herself a cup of hot tea and slowly sipped it. Only then did she speak. "Since cheer has been found, shouldn't we send Yu Xiang away?" When she saw the old madam suddenly open her eyes and look at her, she quickly added, "We're not expelling her from the family, Yu. We're just saying that she's sick and is being released to the farmstead. She will always be an eyesore if she stays in the Fu." Without waiting for the old madam to speak, Yu Pinyin crushed the armrest of the chair and sneered, "If you feel that Xiang'er is an eyesore, then pack up your things and move to Shuiyu Nunnery to accompany Shin Miaoqi. You don't need to come back in this lifetime." "You, how can you speak to me like this?" The Lin clan looked at him in disbelief. Why can't I speak to you like this? I am Marquis Yongla. This is Marquis Yongla. If I want someone to stay, that person must stay. If I want someone to leave, that person must immediately scram. I am your mother. You are unfilial. The Lin clan stood up and yelled at him. My mother had already died on the day my father passed away. The current you is just a wisp of a spirit. Yu Pinyin shook off the sawdust in his palm and coldly said, these words were personally said by you. How could you forget? Since you are a lonely spirit, then you should peacefully stay in the tomb. Do not go around causing trouble. Otherwise, you will inevitably end up with your spirit scattered. The old madam put down her prayer beads and a mocking smile appeared on her face. Dead. 14 years ago, she had already treated this daughter-in-law as dead. But you should have died cleanly. Why did you suddenly become a corpse? She raised her own child. Even if they were not related by blood, they still had feelings. How could she just abandon them like that? The Lin clan was indeed heartless. No wonder Shin Miaoqi treated the family Shan that way and took after her. The Lin clan was speechless and looked on helplessly as her son left in large strides. He even spat out words that made her heart cold. If you dare to mention this matter in the future, you and Shan Miaoqi will scram out of the Marquis household. Yu Pinyin have always been someone who does not recognize anyone. Don't try in vain to challenge my patience. The Lin clan panted and looked at the old madam, her eyes full of pleading. If you dare to expose Xiang Er's identity in front of her and send her away privately, you can take the divorce letter and go home. Old Mistress Ma winked at Nanny Ma, and Nanny Ma immediately stepped forward to drag Lin Shi, who was on the verge of collapsing, away. In the garden, Yu stood in front of a rockery and waited for Yu Xiang, who was passing by. Mother's sweetheart is coming back. When the time comes, there will be no place for you to stand in this prefecture. You. Are you afraid? She slightly leaned forward and the smile on her face was incomparably sweet, but it was like a layer of honey poison. Yu Xiang raised her chin and casually said, older brother is Marquis Yongla and this is Marquis Yongla. As long as older brother is here, there will always be a place for me to stand in the Marquis household. Don't forget, I am also older brother's sweetheart. It's hard to say who doesn't have a place to stand, but I can tell you with certainty that there definitely won't be a place for you to stand. She blinked and her smile was 100 times sweeter than Yu's. The hidden bitterness in her smile was enough to choke people. Yu's beautiful face was distorted beyond recognition. Just as she was about to launch an attack, she saw Yu Pinyin standing not too far away with a meaningful smile on his face. They always said the same thing to different people in different places. This tacit understanding seemed to have long been engraved into his soul, and made him extremely happy every time he thought about it. However, Xiang was wrong about one thing. Yu Pinyin strode over and tapped the tip of her nose with a smile. Silly girl, you are not my sweetheart. Seeing his sister's tearful expression, he laughed out loud. He pulled her into his arms and walked away step by step. He added in an extremely gentle voice, you're not my heart. You're my life. As long as I am Marquis Yongla, this Marquis Yongla will always be your home. Yu Xiang hugged his neck and buried her face in his shoulder as she smiled contentedly. Yu looked at the intimate backs of the two and broke her fingernails with a crack. The members of the Qiu clan standing behind her shook their heads helplessly. The author has something to say. Thank you to my cute little creatures and thank all the friends who supported the original novel. Mwax. Chapter 48. The end of the month arrived quickly, and the old lady sent 2 capable stewards to Shuiyu Nunnery to pick her up. Because the crown princess's premature birth case had come to light, the mastermind was the second prince's wife and her family. Although the second prince tried to deny his knowledge, he was still demoted to a commoner by the emperor and sent to the imperial mausoleum to be placed under house arrest for life. The second prince's wife's family was sent to the death row and beheaded within a few days. Following that, the Yangzhou salt tax case broke out. The Yangzhou officials embezzled more than 30 million taels of tax, which was equivalent to 10 years of the national treasury's annual income. The emperor was furious and ordered the Dragon Scale Guard to take over the case and investigate it to the end. Those who should be executed would be executed, and those who should be beheaded would be beheaded. Those who should be dismissed would be dismissed. There was no mercy allowed outside the law. The end of the month was the time when everyone was in danger. Not to mention that the doors of the aristocratic families were closed. Even the number of pedestrians on the streets were much lesser. Only the market was very lively. Every day, several heads could be seen, and there were countless prisoners who were locked up in the Dragonscale Guard to undergo inhumane interrogation and torture. Yu Pinyan's degree of busyness could be imagined. Shun Miaoqi returning home was a small matter that did not leave a mark on his heart. Early in the morning, he went out to complete his task. The old lady saw that the time was about right and personally went to the door to welcome her. Seeing that Yu Xiang was already waiting outside and had also burned a brazier to get rid of the bad luck, she immediately felt very satisfied. That's right, based on Shun Miaoqi's fate, she really had to get rid of the bad luck before entering. The Lin clan hurriedly rushed over and kept tidying up their hair and tugging at their skirts, appearing very nervous. They repeatedly waved their hands to send Mama Kim to the main door to take a look. Coming, young miss is back. Mama Kim lifted her skirt and rushed over. Behind her was a large group of sturdy maids carrying boxes and baskets. Shun Miaoqi's hair was tied up in a flowing cloud bun with a golden phoenix hairpin pinned on it. She was wearing a snow-white satin long dress, accompanied by the warm spring breeze and fluttering flower petals as she leisurely walked step by step. Her beautiful face was gentle like water, and her elegant bearing was completely natural. In just a short half a month, she had shed the lowly servant's lowly appearance of a merchant and became a real lady of a noble family. Not only was the Lin clan ecstatic, even the old lady could not help but nod her head. Now he could finally go on stage. Shun Miaoqi's pair of watery eyes searched through the crowd, skipping past the smiling Yu Siyu and looking straight at the young lady sitting in the wheelchair. The string of jealousy in her heart was stretched to the extreme and was about to break. She asked Nanny Qin openly and secretly about Yu Xiang's situation. She only knew that Yu Xiang had a broken leg when she was 10 years old. She had a fierce personality and a beautiful appearance. She was a wonderful person. Both old mistress and Yu Pinyan liked her very much. She had originally thought that the other party was on par with her, or perhaps even slightly inferior, because she had always been a beauty since she was young. Wherever she went, she would attract countless gazes. However, when she saw the real Yu Xiang, she realized that Qin Mama's hesitation in saying the word delicate wasn't an insincere compliment, but a helpless action because she couldn't think of a more appropriate adjective. He saw the young girl lazily leaning against the wheelchair with one hand resting on her knee, and the other supporting her chin. Her beautiful eyes with distinct black and white were looking over, and there was a divine light shining in them that was brighter and more beautiful than the spring sun. Her skin was as white as snow, and her pair of eyebrows were not the currently popular curved willow leaf eyebrows. Instead, they were thick and black sword-like eyebrows. The eyebrows were slightly slanted upwards and almost disappeared into the thick hair on her temples. Her exquisite and perfect facial features had the beauty of a woman, and also revealed a unique masculine domineering aura. How could the word delicate describe her? She was beautiful to the point of being fierce, beautiful to the point of being flamboyant, beautiful to the point that there was nowhere to hide. Shun Miaoqi only needed one look to feel breathless. Yu Xiang was Shun Miaoqi's enemy. She would unconsciously use everything she had to compare with Yu Xiang to see who was better and who was worse. She originally thought that she was not much worse than Yu Xiang, especially after training hard for half a month. However, when she saw the real person, she realized that even if Yu Xiang did not know how to walk, she would not be able to hold up the aura of a noble lady in front of her. She only slightly raised her eyebrows and raised her chin. This simple action brought out 120% arrogance. Shun Miaoqi did not dare to take a second look. Her heart was in a mess and her steps were also messy. As she got closer and closer to the brazier, she repeatedly took deep breaths in an attempt to regain her composure. Just at this time, the sound of a servant's greeting could be heard from the door. Shun Miaoqi turned back to look and saw Yu Pinyan expressionlessly walking in with a spring-embroidered knife in his hand. He was wearing a crimson official's robe, and the lower hem seemed to be stained with a lot of liquid. The originally intense crimson-red color was dyed black. That liquid was very thick, and as he walked drop by drop, it slid down from the cloth. A gust of wind blew, and what it brought was not the fragrance of 100 blooming flowers but a nauseating fishy smell. Shun Miaoqi saw a series of bright red dots on the bluestone and discovered that his clothes were not stained with water, but with fresh blood. How many people did he have to kill to bring out such a strong smell of blood? To be able to completely dye the heavy cloth wet? Shun Miaoqi seemed to have returned to the dark dungeon of the Dragonscale Guard, and her legs could not help but go soft. Just at this time she had already walked to the door. Mama Kim kindly reminded her, "Young miss, it is time to step over the brazier." Shun Miaoqi reflexively lifted her leg, but because she could not stand steadily, she stepped into the red-hot charcoal and cried out in pain as she hurriedly jumped away. A few sparks landed on her long skirt, immediately burning a few charred holes. Yu Pinyin directly walked past her and bent down to pick up his well-dressed younger sister. He reached out and brushed away her hair that was messed up by the wind. "Older brother, your face is stained with blood." Yu Xiang took out a handkerchief to help him wipe it. After the blood dried up, it stuck tightly to the skin and was very difficult to clean. Yu Xiang squinted her eyes and snickered. She used her wet fingertips to smear on the blood and then gently wiped it off. Yu Pinyin did not dislike it at all. His gaze lingered on her tender red lips for a long time before he looked at the battered and exhausted Shun Miaoqi, who was frantically patting her skirt. The sparks were quickly extinguished and the old lady shouted loudly, "What are you panicking for? What are you shouting for? You are so frightened over such a small matter." Still not hurrying to bring young miss to change clothes, the Lin clan was so distressed that they shed tears and hurriedly hugged their frightened daughter back to their room. The old lady brushed away the dust that was flying around her nose and looked at the overturned brazier on the ground and sighed. She was indeed a jinx. How could a brazier dispel the bad luck that she carried? Thinking of this, she pointed at Wan Qiu and ordered, "Go and tell Miaoqi to use grapefruit leaves to bathe before coming to the front hall to meet me." Wan Qiu softly acknowledged and hurriedly went down. "Yandere, you should also quickly wash up. Look at how dirty you are." The old lady's impatience was replaced with heartache. Recently, there were two major cases that landed on Sun Tzu's head. The torture and murder cases were really sinful. If it was not for the fact that the Junjie passed away early, leaving behind the old, weak, women, children and a bunch of wolf-like uncles, Sun Tzu would not have to embark on this difficult and dangerous path. Yu Pinyin nodded and took his younger sister along with him. In the simple but elegant room, Yu Xiang was half sitting on the soft couch. She was playing with a snuff bottle in her hand, but her eyes were looking behind the screen that was emitting steam. Lulu stood outside the door and did not dare to enter. Her heart was as anxious as a cat. How could the older brother bathe and the younger sister stay in the inner room? This pair of brother and sister never knew how to avoid this taboo. It was fine when they were young, but now that they were older, they did not take it seriously. This habit had to be changed immediately. Otherwise, how would Mistress marry in the future? As soon as she stepped out, she stepped on the blood-soaked official's robe. The blood quickly climbed up the fabric to the tip of her shoe. The dark red color looked very frightening. Lulu trembled and quickly withdrew. She held her forehead and looked at Tao Hong, who was standing not far away playing with a bird. She sighed inwardly. It's good to be a fool, there are no worries. The sound of water splashing could be heard from behind the screen. After a short while, a handsome young man with wet hair walked out. He was wearing a black brocade robe with only a jade belt around his waist. The lapel of his robe was wide open, revealing his strong chest and strong abdominal muscles. His bronze-colored skin reflected a lustrous light from the water, making him look extremely sexy. Yu Xiang's ears were hot, but her eyes were glued to the young man's body. Only when she heard a hoarse and deep laugh did she discover that her fingertips had already poked his hard abdominal muscles and were moving along the lines of his muscles. Her ears instantly turned red like blood. Yu Pinyin naturally held her small hand and slowly pulled it up. In the end, he placed it on his broad chest, letting her feel his growing impatience and desire day by day. His heart was beating very fast, but it was also very steady. Thump thump, thump thump. It was like a small hammer hitting her palm. Yu Xiang felt that her palm was not on his skin, but on burning charcoal. The temperature was shockingly hot. She moved her fingertips and wanted to pull her hand back, But the young man was one step ahead of her and released the big palm on the back of her hand. He handed over a towel and said, "Help me wipe my hair." The romantic atmosphere burst like a bubble. Yuxiang blinked her eyes in a daze, then picked up a handkerchief and gently wiped her face. After that, she leaned on her brother's back and gently sniffed the sandalwood aroma from his hair, as she always did. The two of them did not speak. Their rapid heartbeats returned to normal in the silence. Yuxiang slyly chuckled twice. Her slender arm wrapped around the young man's neck and asked, "Brother, if I fell into the water at the same time as my sister, who would you save first?" What kind of question was this? Was she jealous? Yu Pinyin did not answer. He just chuckled to himself. The arm around his neck tightened, as if warning him that if he did not give a satisfactory answer soon, she would be ruthless. Yu Pinyin stretched out his arms and pulled his sister into his embrace. He tapped the tip of her nose and said, "Naturally, I would save you. Then if I fell into the water at the same time as my mother, who would you save first?" Yuxiang leaned closer and stared into his eyes. "Naturally, I would still save you," Yu Pinyin quickly answered. His eyes sparkled with joy. He loved Xiang'er, who did not hide her possessiveness at all. Then if I and she realized that it was not appropriate to compare herself with the ancestor. It was obvious that she was making things difficult for her brother. She omitted the unfinished words and hugged her brother's thin waist with a satisfied smile. Yu Pinyin forcefully pressed her into his arms and sighed silently. Chapter 49. After washing up and changing their clothes, Yu Pinyin and Shen Miaoqi entered the main hall one after another. The old lady was already sitting on the main seat and waved to her granddaughter in her grandson's arms. "Xiang'er, come sit beside old ancestor." Yu Pinyin carefully put his younger sister down and sat next to her. The Lin clan ordered Mama Kim to pour tea and helped Shen Miaoqi to sit down before reproaching. "Yandere, next time clean yourself up first before coming back. Look at how scared you made Chur today. What if you hurt yourself? Moreover, today is our family's big day. Why did you come back with a body full of blood and bring so much bad luck for no reason?" This was really 14 years of not caring for her son, and the moment she opened her mouth, she complained that her son was not clean. Do you know why he was tainted with such a strong smell of blood? Do you know what kind of huge price he had to pay to support this family? Do you know how many life and death situations he had to go through in order to let everyone have a good life? Where were you when he was suffering? What qualifications do you have to talk irresponsibly to him? Yu Pinyin did not speak and only lightly glanced at her. The old lady was so angry that she laughed and slammed the table with a pong sound as she scolded. "This is Marquis Yongla, Yan'er's home. He can come back whenever he wants to. What right do you have to interrupt? If you dislike Yan'er, then get out of here as soon as possible. Ma, go get the divorce papers." Every time she spoke to the Lin clan, the old lady would take out the divorce papers that she had already written to force her. After 14 years, she was really tired. If she was not Yan'er's birth mother, she would have already thrown her back to her maternal family. If it was in the past, the Lin clan would have covered their faces and cried, ignoring the old lady's scolding. But this time, her daughter was watching from the side, and she felt that she had received a great insult. Her face turned red for a moment. But she had not been in charge of the family for 14 years, and the old lady had the final say in the household. If the old lady wanted to divorce on behalf of her son, she could only take her luggage and leave. She secretly scratched her palms and looked at her son with pleading eyes. Yu Pinyin lowered his head to peel the melon seeds and stuffed them into his sister's mouth one by one. He pretended not to see or hear anything. At this juncture, there was no place for Yusiu to talk, so she buried her head and pretended to be dead. The hall was strangely quiet for a moment, leaving only the sound of Yuxiang munching on the melon seeds. Her big eyes with distinct black and white were looking at Shen Miaoqi's face. Shen Miaoqi spoke in fear and trepidation. "Grandmother, mother's heart ached for me, so she misspoke. Please forgive this one." Just then Mama Kim came in with a pot of tea. She quickly poured a cup of hot tea and knelt in front of the old lady. She said, "This is the first time your granddaughter has returned home. This cup of tea is for grandmother. I wish grandmother a long and happy life." With that, she raised her hands and looked at grandmother eagerly. Matriarch Tai stared at her for a long while before taking the teacup and taking a sip. She then handed over a pouch. You're a discerning person. Get up. Keep this well and it will ensure your safety. Since you've avoided death, you don't need to take on other people's surname. In the future, you will be called Yu Miaoqi and will be rank 2nd. Xiang'er will be ranked below you and will be Miss 3. Shan Miaoqi respectfully took the pouch and used her fingertips to secretly pinch it. There was only a thin piece of paper inside and she did not know what it was. She poured another cup of tea and offered it to the red-eyed Lin clan. She softly said, Mother, please drink this tea. This is the first cup of tea that your daughter has offered you. I wish Mother good health and eternal youth. Lin clan immediately smiled and took the cup of tea and drained it in one gulp. She then took off the priceless jade bracelet on her wrist and put it on her wrist. She then took her into her arms and gently patted her. The scene of the two people quietly cuddling looked very warm, but it made the mood of everyone in the hall even more gloomy. Old Lady Tai twirled her prayer beads and sneered. Yu Pinyin simply turned his head away. Yu Xiang was worried that his heart would be unbalanced, so she brushed off the melon seed shells on her skirt and plunged into his arms. Her small hands reached out to his back and gently patted him. She used her actions to tell him, Older brother, you still have me. Yu Pinyin scooped her up and placed her on his lap and smiled happily. Old Lady Tai tilted her head to look at the intimate brother and sister. Her tense face gradually softened and she waved her hand. All right, since you have already met the elders, let's move to the side hall to eat. You 3 sisters can meet again in private. Shun Miaoqi withdrew from the Lin clan's embrace and obediently agreed. Her complacency before she came had long been replaced by apprehension. The Lin clan's position in prefecture, you seemed to be different from what she had imagined. Not to mention that old Lady Tai did not take her seriously. Even Yu Pinyin and Yu Xiang treated her with indifference. How did the Lin clan survive all these years? A sense of crisis attacked Shun Miaoqi's heart. It was rare for all the masters of the family Yu to gather together. Therefore, today's meal was especially sumptuous. There was even a jar of good wine that was placed on Yu Pinyin's seat. After everyone sat down, old Lady Tai picked up some food with her chopsticks and then waved her hand to let everyone do as they pleased. The Lin clan kept moving food into their daughter's bowl. They could not wait to move all the dishes in front of their daughter. Yu Miaoqi returned the courtesy and placed the food back into her bowl. Yu Xiang supported her chin with one hand and enjoyed the mother and daughter's endless affectionate drama. Yu Siyu, who was sitting opposite her, winked at her with schadenfreude. But the conflict in the hall also made her understand that no matter how much the Lin clan doted on Yu Miaoqi, as long as old Lady Tai and Yu Pinyin were here, they could forget about suppressing Yu Xiang. 14 years had passed and the Lin clan was no longer the matriarch who kept her word. Yu Pinyin pinched his sister's chin and turned her head back. He said in a deep voice, What is there to see? Eat. Older brother will get food for you. You don't need to be envious of others. He had also longed for the maternal love of the Lin clan. But after so many years, he understood that it was something that did not exist. If his sister needed affection, he could give it to her. He could even give her more than she could imagine. Old Lady Tai also felt sorry for her grandchildren. She gave each of them some food and gently said, Eat. If you want anything, just tell old ancestor. Old ancestor will get it for you. She only gathered this once. Next time, she would let the mother and daughter go back to their own room. This attitude was really disgusting. They were all children. She could not just favor one child and treat the others as if they were picked up. Yu Miaoqi was very perceptive. She quickly persuaded the Lin clan to eat on their own. Then she gave old Lady Tai and Yu Pinyin a piece of fish each with a shy smile on her face. Hey, don't give big brother fish. Big brother doesn't eat fish. Yu Xiang put the fish back into her bowl. The smile on Yu Miaoqi's face stiffened. She ignored Yu Xiang and looked at the Lin clan to ask, Mother, does big brother hate to eat fish? This is my first time coming home, so I really don't know. What does big brother like to eat? Tell me and I'll remember. The Lin clan was stumped by the question and looked very awkward. When her husband died, her son was only 5 years old. He did not even have the ability to take care of himself. He ate whatever was fed to him. How could she know what her son liked? Old Lady Tai Tai's face darkened when she saw the Lin clan trying to avoid the question. Her daughter-in-law's indifference to her grandson had always been a thorn in her heart. She would never forgive her daughter-in-law's irresponsible behavior until her death. The more she cared about Yu Miaoqi now, the more pitiful her grandson looked back then. A wave of depression surged into Old Lady Tai Tai's chest. She could neither spit it out nor swallow it. It was very uncomfortable. Yu Xiang's face also turned cold. She slammed her chopsticks on the table. Yu Miaoqi knew that she had said something wrong, but she did not know where she had gone wrong. Even if she was not the biological daughter of the Shen family, Mother Shen had never mistreated her. She had even given her twice the amount of motherly love. Therefore, she could never imagine that there would be a mother in this world who would ignore her own child like this. As the saying goes, a peck is a drink, and a bite is returned with a bite. The Lin clan's current awkward situation was also her own doing. Yu Miaoqi did not dare to ask the gloomy old lady Tai Tai. She could only look at Yu Xiang beside her. Little sister, what does Big Brother like to eat? My culinary skills are not bad. I can cook for Big Brother personally in the future. It can also make up for the regret of us not seeing each other for so many years. After hearing this, Yu Xiang was even more unwilling to tell her. She hugged Yu Pinion's arm and pretended to be ignorant as she asked, Big Brother, what do you like to eat? I forgot about it too. Yu Pinion tapped the tip of her perky nose and said with a smile, I like to eat whatever you like to eat. Yu Miaoqi gripped her chopsticks tightly and asked persistently, Then what do you like to eat, little sister? Yu Xiang tilted her head and looked at her. Her contrasting cat eyes sparkled with a sly light. Oh, me? I'm not picky. I like to eat everything. In the end, she was just teasing her. Not only was she hostile to her, but she also disliked her. But what right did she have? Who did she think she was? The fire in Yu Miaoqi's heart burned fiercely. Instead, she smiled faintly and lowered her head to eat with tears in her eyes. Her aggrieved attitude softened Old Lady Tai Tai's heart. She picked up her chopsticks again and said, Don't talk while eating. Everyone eat quietly. Today is a good day. Don't waste it. Everyone agreed in low voices. Yu Xiang no longer had any appetite. She moved a plate of drunk prawns in front of her, peeled the shell, dipped it in sauce and stuffed it into her brother's mouth. Yu Pinion poured half a bowl of egg custard into a bowl, mixed it with white rice, and fed it to her brother one spoonful at a time until they were half full. The siblings had loved to eat like this since they were young. Old Lady Tai Tai was already used to it. On the other hand, Yu Miaoqi kept looking over. She did not show it on her face, but her heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. She could see that in terms of ranking in the Marquis household, Yu Pinion was the true master, followed by Old Lady Tai Tai, and then the Lin clan. If she wanted to have a foothold in the Marquis household, winning over the Lin clan was far from enough. She also needed to win the favor of Old Lady Tai Tai and Yu Pinion. However, based on how much Yu Pinion spoiled Yu Xiang, it would not be easy for her to occupy a more important position in his heart than Yu Xiang. Without Yu Pinion's love, how could she live in the future? All kinds of calculations appeared in her mind. Yu Miaoqi felt like she had lost her appetite. Yu Xiang was also absent-minded. In fact, she really wanted to grab Yu Miaoqi and ask her how her family was doing. Although she did not want to leave with them, she still wanted to know about them. If they were doing well, then so be it. If they were not doing well, then she could still help them out a little. She would have done her best for the original owner. However, it seemed like Old Lady Tai Tai and her brother did not want her to have any contact with that family. She could only pretend that she did not know. She knew what was going on in her heart, but she still had to pretend to be ignorant. This kind of life was not easy. Everyone at the table had different ideas. Unknowingly, the meal was finished. Yu Pinion did not want to stay any longer. After saying goodbye to Old Lady Tai Tai, he picked up his little sister and left first. Yu Miaoqi wanted to leave with the Lin clan, but Yu Siyu stopped her. The Lin clan was happy to see her have a playmate. They waved their hands and told her to go ahead. Yu Siyu led Yu Miaoqi back to her small courtyard. As soon as she entered the door, she asked, Where is your original family? Why didn't you let them come and pick up Yu Xiang? Don't you hate her for taking over a magpie's nest for 14 years? That family is a lowly traveling merchant. Yu Xiang should be the daughter of a merchant family. This is letting her off too easily. The smile on Yu Miaoqi's face froze. She said in a low voice, I don't know what you're talking about. At the same time, her good impression of this stepsister of hers turned into deep malice. It was one thing for her mother, grandmother, and brother to know about the past that she had tried her best to cover up, but why did this person know as well? Without a doubt, Yu Xiu had surpassed Yu Xiang. She had become the obstacle that she wanted to get rid of the most. She was the legitimate daughter of the Marquis family, not some daughter of a merchant family. The author has something to say. Thank you to my patrons. In order to maintain this relationship, I will work hard to write. I will definitely update twice this weekend. If I see a single update, I will definitely make it up within a day. Chapter 50. After the two entered the room, members of the Chiu clan sneaked around the back wall and pressed their ears against it to eavesdrop. When Yu Xiu saw that she refused to admit it, she covered her mouth with a handkerchief and chuckled. Younger sister, you don't have to play dumb with me. I've known about you for a long time. I've been waiting for you to come back all these years. It's so pitiful that you went to that kind of family and suffered so much. Quickly tell older sister about it. She picked up the girl's slightly rough and scarred hand and gently patted it. Yu Miaoqi forcefully pulled her hand back and forced a smile. Older sister, what nonsense are you saying? I've always been fostered at Shueihua Nunnery, so how could I have any other family? I haven't seen my mother in a long time and miss her very much, so I'm going back to accompany her. When I have time in the future, I'll visit older sister again. After she finished speaking, she quickly left, ignoring Yu Xiu's pleas to stay. When she was far away, members of the Chiu clan crept out from behind the wall and pushed open the door. They advised, Eldest Miss, you're really muddle-headed. It's one thing for you to know such a secret, but why did you have to bring it up in front of her? Are you afraid that she won't miss you? You'll be able to get married after this period of time, so don't cause any more trouble. You old dog, you're eavesdropping on me again. Sooner or later, the heavens will send down a bolt of divine lightning to strike you to death. Why don't you go to Yu Xiang and tell her about her family background if you have the ability? If you dare, I'll give you 500 taels of silver. Yu Xiu pointed at her nose and scolded angrily. The Chiu clan member lowered her voice and said, even if young miss gave me 50,000 taels of silver, I wouldn't dare to ask for it, let alone 500 taels of silver. If this matter were to blow up, Master Ho would skin me alive and chop me into minced meat, and that would be considered light punishment. Who knows, he might even kill my entire family. Young miss, why do you want to send me to my death in vain? When she thought about how her older brother doted on Yu Xiang, Yu Xiu fell silent and tore her handkerchief to vent her anger. The Chiu clan continued to persuade her. Miss, you really made a mistake today. You think that by revealing second Miss's identity, you're trying to form an alliance with someone who knows you well. But in fact, it's the exact opposite. It's fine if you don't say anything, but once you do, she'll definitely hate you. Think about it, if you asked the merchant to take Miss Xiang away, wouldn't her past be exposed? Being 14 years old in the Shang family and being 14 years old in the Marquis household were completely different. Now that this matter had blown up, the one who found it most difficult to maintain her standing was not Miss Xianger, but her. How could she still have the face to meet others in the future? Don't you think she'll be afraid and hate you if you rashly expose it in front of her? Who knows how he'll deal with you in the future? Yu Xiu carefully digested her words. The more she thought about it, the more worried she became. She put on a strong front and sneered, don't be an alarmist. His younger sister looked like a gentle person. She was different from Yu Xiang, who was a shrew. Moreover, even if she hated me, what could she do to me? She and the Lin clan's status in the Marquis household isn't even as high as mine. Just as they were speaking, Yu Miaoqi's head maidservant, Bao Shang, reported from outside the door, Eldest Miss, second Miss sent this servant to deliver something to you. She said that she left in a hurry this time and is truly sorry. She wants you to visit her more often in the future. You're all sisters, so you should be of one mind. Yu Xiu opened the brocade box that Bao Shang had delivered and discovered a set of exquisitely crafted 8-treasure jadeite head ornaments inlaid with gold. It felt heavy in her hands and was a bit dazzling. She happily sent away Bao Shang and smugly looked towards the Chou clan. Look, she's trying to win me over. As expected, she has a soft personality and is easy to manipulate. With her as my tool, Yu Xiang's going to suffer in the future. Soft personality? The Chou clan shook their heads as they lifted the curtain and left. Although that Yu Miaoqi's face was gentle and clean, her eyes were very cloudy and emitted a sinister aura. If you were to mix with her, eldest miss wouldn't even know how she died. Forget it, since eldest miss doesn't believe me, I'll just say less. Yu Miaoqi walked on a dimly lit path with towering trees on both sides. The family Shin used to be a tycoon. There were pavilions and pagodas everywhere in the house, and it was a dazzling sight. She originally thought that the family Shun status was only a bit lower than other families, but after returning to the Marquis household, she realized that the difference between the two families was like heaven and earth. The Marquis household didn't have any exquisitely carved beams or painted rafters. It was the most rigid and orthodox square building. The colors weren't the usual gold, green, red, and blue of wealthy families but a dull green. Even the plants in the courtyard were mostly giant trees instead of flowering trees. However, it was such a simple structure that gave off a grandiose aura that could swallow everything. Inside it, one would feel especially small. Yu Miaoqi walked to the front of the Lin clan's house and raised her head to look at the beast-shaped roof on the porch. Its big mouth looked as if it wanted to swallow her whole. She shook her head. She was both shocked and happy. So this was the so-called prestigious family, a century-old family. And from now on, she would be the legitimate daughter of this family. She would have an even greater and more glorious future. If anyone tried to stop her, they would be her enemy, and she would do everything in her power to get rid of them. After standing still for a long time, she calmed down. She ordered Bao Shang to deliver something to Yu Xiu as she walked towards the Lin clan's house. My child, you're back. Here are some bolts of cloth. Come and take a look. After matching the colors, I'll have the tailor make some spring clothes for you. Seeing that their daughter had returned, the Lin clan happily welcomed her. Yu Miaoqi walked over to inspect the cloth. It was all expensive Sichuan brocade, but the colors were somewhat old-fashioned. She couldn't help but frown. The Lin clan felt something and hurriedly explained, "These are the satin that mother saved up a few years ago. They're all tributes and are very precious. Although the colors are no longer fashionable, they're still good enough to make a few gowns." After saying that, she waved to Mama Kim, "Go and call the shopkeeper of Splendid Pavilion over. Tell her to only bring the most expensive jewelry and cloth. My daughter wants to choose." Mama Kim obeyed the order and left. The Lin clan pulled open a bolt of cloth and placed it on their daughter's body. Yu Miaoqi dismissed all the maidservants in the house and asked in a low voice, "Mother, how did you know about my background?" If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it." The Lin clan's expression changed greatly. "That year, your grandmother and I were discussing how to send Yu Xiang away, and she happened to overhear it. Mother, she even asked me today why I didn't let the family Shin take Yu Xiang away. I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words to reply to her for a moment. Mother, what if she spreads the news about me? How will I face people in the future?" Yu Miaoqi took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears. After thinking for a long time, she finally decided to tell the Lin clan and let the Lin clan deal with Yu Xiu. She had just returned home and hadn't yet found her footing. It would be extremely difficult for her to get rid of Yu Xiu. It would be cheaper for the Lin clan to do it. She also wanted to get rid of Yu Xiang, but the premise was that her background couldn't be exposed. Now she had no way to deal with Yu Xiang. She had nowhere to vent the grievances and resentment in her heart, but Yu Xiu had to bump into her and bring her bad luck. The Lin clan was also furious and cursed in a low voice, "That lowly wench isn't easy to deal with. She wants to use you as a tool to deal with Yu Xiang. Don't worry, Mother will definitely think of a way to get rid of her. It's too bad that your older brother and old ancestor didn't agree to let Yu Xiang live alone in the farmstead. Son, bear with it for a few days. Mother will think of another way." When Yu Miaoqi heard this, her heart trembled. She hurriedly said, "Mother, what did you say to grandmother and older brother?" She was afraid that the Lin clan would push this matter onto her and cause her older brother and grandmother to dislike her. "I said that keeping her in the manor would be an eyesore, so it would be better to send her away. My son, I know what I'm saying. Don't worry. The Lin clan wasn't stupid. They just didn't want to be clear-headed. She knew very well what to do to make her daughter happy and satisfied. Yu Miaoqi breathed a sigh of relief. She threw herself into the Lin clan's arms and cried softly. Prefecture Yu was completely different from what she had imagined. She had thought that her family, whom she hadn't seen in years, would welcome her home in the most enthusiastic way, but in the end they were even more indifferent than the last. Only the Lin clan treated her wholeheartedly. No matter how cold her heart was, it warmed up a little. The Lin clan patted her back and promised again, "Mother is here, so don't worry. Mother will definitely think of a way to get you far away so that she won't get in your way again. As for Yu Xiang, let's take it slow. She's not a child of the Marquis household, yet she still wants to occupy the Marquis household's territory. She's not afraid of shortening her life." The mother and daughter hugged and chatted for a while. Mama Kim led the shopkeeper of Splendid Pavilion over, followed by many maidservants carrying boxes. When the red lacquered boxes were opened, there were all kinds of precious jewels and fabrics. When the sun shone, the entire room was filled with sparkling colors. It was so dazzling that they couldn't open their eyes. "Madam, feel free to choose whatever you like. These are all the latest jewels and fabrics this year. They're treasures at the bottom of the box. If it were any other store, I wouldn't be willing to take them out." The shopkeeper smiled very flatteringly. The Lin clan led Yu Miaoqi forward to choose. She wore this hairpin and that gauze draped over her shoulders. She simply couldn't bear to part with them. After choosing for more than an hour, the Lin clan pointed to several boxes and slowly said, "How much are these worth? Calculate it for me. I'll take them all." The shopkeeper adhered to the principle of doing more and talking less. Although he was very curious about Yu Miaoqi's identity, he didn't take another look. He picked up the little golden abacus hanging in front of his chest and fiddled with it for a while. He smiled flatteringly and said, "Madam, the total is 3,568 taels. Please give me a matching tile so that I can withdraw the money from the accounts." "Matching tile? What matching tile?" The Lin clan was stunned. "This is the Fu's rule. You actually don't know?" Miss Xiang said that anyone who spends more than 100 taels has to write a note and go to her place to get a matching tile. The accounts will only withdraw the money if they have a matching tile. Towards the end of the year, Miss Xiang has an account book, this commoner has an account book, and the accounts master has an account book. These 3 account books all need to be accounted for. Not a single cent can be wrong. The shopkeeper was speechless as he explained. When it came to managing a household, Miss Xiang was the only one in the entire capital who had such skills. There was a saying that when the water was too clear, there would be no fish. The mistress of the household usually turned a blind eye to the corruption of the servants and pretended not to see it. However, Miss Xiang couldn't tolerate sand in her eyes. She formulated a set of extremely strict accounting methods that made it difficult for anyone to steal a needle. Miss Xiang had a good saying, "You eat my food, wear my clothes, and use my things. Your entire family depends on me to support you. Yet you still steal my things behind my back. You have the heart of a wolf and lungs of a dog, so why should I indulge you? It's not like I'm a saint." This sentence simply struck a chord in the shopkeeper's heart. She secretly asked Miss Xiang for advice, and the accounts of the several branches all followed this list. Since then the atmosphere had become much clearer, and she felt very comfortable. The shopkeeper was full of praise for Yu Xiang, but the Lin clan exploded in anger. She questioned, "Since when do I need to report to her when I buy things? Who does she think she is?" Realizing that she had misspoken, the Lin clan hurriedly covered her mouth with a handkerchief. The shopkeeper pretended that he didn't hear anything and said with a smile, "Miss Xiang has been managing this household for 4 years. She set this rule early on, so this commoner has no choice. You don't want to let this commoner have a matching tile, but you can't let this commoner go to the accounts room and rob it, right? The Fu's patrolling guards would chop this commoner up. Madam, you can send someone to ask Miss Xiang. It'll only take half a cup of tea's time." The Lin clan had no choice but to send Mama Kim to get a matching tile. Chapter 51. After Yu Pinyin carried his sister back to the room, he was not in a hurry to leave. He went to the outer room, twisted a wet handkerchief, and wiped off the thick makeup on her face. A thorny rose instantly turned into a sweet and greasy piece of honey that was about to melt under the sun. This softness and sweetness only bloomed in front of him, making Yu Pinyan's heart tremble. A limp and numb aftertaste flowed from his heart to his limbs and bones. It was more intoxicating than drinking several large jars of strong liquor. He caressed his sister's delicate cheeks and looked at her for a long time. He found that there was still a trace of bright red lipstick on her lips. He gently wiped it away with his finger, then put it in his mouth and tasted it carefully. It was indeed sweet and greasy. Yuxiang opened her clear cat eyes and asked heartlessly, "Is it sweet? I put a lot of beeswax and rose petals." "It's sweet, but it can be sweeter." Yu Pinyan handed the handkerchief to Lulu, who was a little dumbfounded. He took off his boots and got on the couch. He held his sister in his arms and took out a journal from behind her pillow. He slowly flipped through it, but he did not plan to leave. Lulu's heart was in his throat. He walked out with heavy steps and carried the basin out. Master Ho's actions just now were strange no matter how he looked at it. They were brother and sister, right? Why did they look like a newlywed couple? Yuxiang did not feel worried at all. Instead, she giggled and poked her brother's hard chest. "How much more beeswax should I put in the dessert? I'm making lipstick, not candy. Brother, when did you like to eat candy so much? After being together with you." However, Yu Pinyan did not dare to say this out loud. He pinched her white fingertips and said meaningfully, "The way you eat it is different, so the taste is naturally different. There are different ways to eat lipstick?" Yuxiang covered her mouth and chuckled. Suddenly, a light flashed through her mind. She was about to think about it when Tao Hong opened the curtain and said, "Miss Mama Kim is here." The light disappeared in the blink of an eye and could no longer be found. Mama Kim was a concubine of the Lin clan. As far as Yuxiang could remember, she had never stepped into his courtyard except for that one time when she gave him the demon-suppressing talisman. This time she probably had something to ask of him. Let her in. She snuggled into the crook of Yu Pinyan's arm and propped her head up to look at the miscellaneous notes with him. Mama Kim was dazzled by the scene in front of her. He saw the brother and sister pair, one handsome beyond compare, the other delicate beyond compare. They were leaning against each other on the soft couch, reading the same book together. Their heads were very close together, the tips of their noses almost touching each other, not to mention their breaths that had long since become inseparable. This kind of attitude was too intimate even for a pair of blood-related siblings, let alone a pair of fake siblings. Moreover, Master Ho's gaze that occasionally swept over Yuxiang was filled with tenderness, affection, and tenderness. Mama Kim's heart suddenly thumped, as if she had caught a glimpse of some secret. However, she saw Master Ho casually glance over. There was no trace of tenderness in his eyes, only a bone-piercing chill. She was almost torn to pieces by this gaze that contained countless daggers. She hurriedly cleared her mind of distracting thoughts and knelt down to pay her respects. "This servant greets Master Ho and Miss 3. Yu Pinyan didn't pay her any attention and lowered his eyes to continue reading. Yuxiang furrowed his brows and said, "I'm really not used to the second Miss suddenly becoming Miss 3. Mama Kim lowered her head even more, not knowing how to respond. However, Yuxiang didn't intend to let her off and said sarcastically, "You people from the main branch have always disdained to patronize my courtyard. The last time you came was 8 years ago. What a rare guest." Mama Kim's heart trembled slightly, and she felt somewhat uneasy. The Lin clan didn't care about the household's affairs, but that didn't mean she was blind. She could clearly see the changes in Yuxiang over the years. Perhaps she had been enlightened by the great calamity, but her foolishness had disappeared. Not only did her brain become more active, her appearance became more beautiful, and her temper became more unreasonable. At the age of 10, she managed the large marquis household in an orderly and proper manner. In terms of ability and bearing, she didn't lose to any noble lady, not to mention the old lady and Master Ho's unprincipled pampering of her. If she was disrespectful to the madam and wasn't close to the second miss, then the madam and the young miss wouldn't have good days in the future. When she returned, should she persuade the madam to pull herself together and take control of the household's affairs? Only then would she be able to contend with her? Otherwise, wouldn't the Marquis household become the world of a bastard child? Mama Kim's mind was constantly turning, but she didn't show it on her face. She respectfully replied, because the madam is very worried and depressed, she can't be separated from her all day long. This servant didn't dare to neglect her and neglected young Mississippi. Young miss, please forgive me. Yuseong didn't care if her brother had finished reading. She directly flipped back to the page she was reading and said carelessly, you really know how to talk. What do you mean by forgive me? If I accused you of a crime, Mother would definitely cry until the Marquis household collapsed. You don't visit a temple without a cause. Speak, what is it? The madam had become more and more muddle-headed in recent years, wiping away her tears and sobbing, indulging in the past. Mama Kim also felt annoyed. After hearing Yuseong's words, she felt even more embarrassed. She lowered her voice and said, the madam sent this servant to ask for a match of cards from Miss 3. Shopkeeper Qian is waiting over there. Yuseong finally looked at her and said slowly, you also know the rules of the household. Where are the list and the receipt? Let me see. Fortunately, shopkeeper Qian reminded her before she left. Mama Kim brought the list along and quickly bowed as she handed it over. Yuseong left her brother's arms and unfolded the list to look carefully. Yu Pinyin held her waist, afraid that she would lose her balance and fall. Yuseong smiled as she looked, but the words that came out of her mouth didn't carry a trace of joy. Look at how generous Mother is. Gold silk incense wood inlaid with cicadas and jade beads. A palace makeup with 1,000 leaves of golden peony hair ornaments. An exquisite emerald grass headworm inlaid with pearls. A gold silk brocade gown. A cloud of butterflies skirt. I stayed by her side for 14 years, but I didn't receive a single needle or thread from her. I only received a pile of demon-suppressing talismans. I want to ask, am I really Mother's biological daughter? She naturally knew in her heart that she wasn't her biological daughter, but in the eyes of others she didn't know at all. It was normal for her to be jealous and ridiculed after seeing the list. Yuseong was just this kind of person. If anyone wronged her, she would return the favor regardless of whether they were in the right or wrong. If she could live a flamboyant life, she wouldn't be sullen. Although Yu Miaoqi hid it well, the deep hatred that occasionally flowed out of her eyes couldn't escape Yuseong's eyes. It was fine if she hated her, but she also hated her brother. This was unbearable. Since she harbored resentment and was waiting for an opportunity to take revenge, Yuseong didn't plan on tolerating her. If she showed her hostile attitude early on, she wouldn't need to feign civility in the future and disgust herself for no reason. Mama Kim lowered her head and didn't dare to answer. In front of Master Ho, who dared to say the word bastard? That person didn't need to live anymore. Moreover, for the sake of second Mrs. reputation, they had no choice but to acknowledge Yuseong's status as the legitimate daughter. Yu Pinyin put down his book and pulled her into his arms. He gently patted her and comforted her. Why bother with this? We're all grown up and don't need to rely on her. What does it matter if she's your biological daughter or not? Brother will buy you whatever you like. Even if you want the stars in the sky, brother will find a way to pluck them for you. The gloominess on Yuseong's face instantly dissipated. She hugged his arm and smiled sweetly. I don't want the stars in the sky. I only want brother. Brother is my whole world. As long as I have brother, I'm satisfied. Yu Pinyin clearly understood her unfinished words. He leaned over and rubbed his beard against her delicate cheek. He squinted his eyes to admire her flower-like smile. Mama Kim didn't dare to raise her head to look at the brother and sister on the bed. She secretly pondered Master Ho's words. What did he mean by don't need to rely on her? What did he mean by what did it matter if she wasn't his biological daughter? Did Master Ho's heart turn cold and he didn't plan on acknowledging Master anymore? That's right. Anyone who was abandoned for 14 years would have resentment in their heart. Not only did Master treat Master Ho coldly, but he also doted on second Mississippi. This was clearly stabbing a knife into Master Ho's heart. Both of them were his biological daughters. He couldn't neglect one and dote on the other. The one he doted on would be married off sooner or later. Wasn't Master's stable life today all because of Master Ho? Even second Mrs. Future would have to depend on the Marquis to fight for it. Now that she was estranged from Master Ho, it would be difficult for her to advance in the future. Just by looking at the things she bought, she would have to write an IOU if she spent more than 100 taels. Which matriarch would be reduced to such a lowly situation? As Mama Kim wrote down the IOU, she secretly pondered. She planned to go back and persuade her master to quickly win back Master Ho's heart. Yu Xiang took the IOU and glanced at it before handing it back. Write down the year, month, and date, why it was spent, and who it was. Then put your fingerprint on it. In the future, you will have to follow this rule when you pick up the tiles. I've already made an exception for elder sister's return this time. Otherwise, I won't approve anything above 3,000 taels unless there's an important celebration. In the future, if you want to be so extravagant, you'll have to pay for it yourselves. Seeing Mama Kim's dissatisfaction, she coldly said, "Don't talk about mother. Even old ancestor and I have to save money for our daily expenses. Of course, older brother is an exception. Older brother has to socialize outside. How can he be short of money? This is something you can't compare to." Yu Pinyin gave a low laugh. He really likes Xiang Er's appearance as a little housekeeper. Because the Lin clan lived in seclusion and rarely went out, they ate vegetarian food and prayed to Buddha. Their daily expenses were mostly yellow joss paper, candles, incense, and other offerings. 20 taels a month was more than enough for them. Therefore, they took the tiles from the future Yu Xiang. Mama Kim patiently agreed. She wrote down the IOU again and put her fingerprint on it. Only then did she successfully take the tiles. Just as she was about to open the door curtain, she heard Yu Xiang call out, "Wait, I haven't given elder sister a gift yet. You can take it while you're at it." Mama Kim had no choice but to turn around and wait on the side with a bow. Yu Pinyin carried her to the dressing table and allowed her to pick and choose from the dressing table. He casually picked up a velvet flower and inserted it into her hair. After admiring it for a moment, he took it off and inserted it into her hair bun. The corners of his eyes and the tips of his eyebrows revealed a deep happiness. This gentle and considerate appearance was poles apart from his cold and cruel style of doing things. He simply didn't seem like the same person. Yu Xiang picked up a butterfly hairpin and looked at it. She shook her head and said, "This won't do. Elder brother gave it to me." She then took out a set of ruby jewelry and continued to shake her head. "This was also given to me by elder brother. This won't do." After picking and choosing for a long time, she rejected all the things that were given to her by Yu Pinyin. Only then did she realize that 99% of her jewelry was given to her by her elder brother. She immediately felt sweet as if she had eaten honey. She glanced at her elder brother from time to time, and then pursed her lips to hide her happiness. Yu Pinyin pretended not to know, but in fact, he loved her possessive look. He held back his laughter and reached out to gently tap the tip of her nose. Seeing that Mama Kim's face was about to turn green, Lulu had no choice but to take a dusty box from an antique shelf and said, "Miss, this is the headdress that you bought from Jinsho Pavilion last month. You haven't worn it even once. It's perfect for 2nd Mississippi." Only then did Yu Xiang close the box and said carelessly, "Then I'll give this to you. Go back and tell elder sister to come to my place to play when she has time. My legs are inconvenient, so I won't be able to visit her." Mama Kim repeatedly agreed. She held the box and hurriedly rushed to the main room. It took her half an hour to match the tiles. She reckoned that her master's face was about to be destroyed. How was she the mistress of the household? She was more like a concubine who lived by others' whims. The author has something to say. "I already said that I wanted to maintain a long-term relationship. I'm going to write 2 chapters today. Moi." I also saw a very deranged comment. It said that when would elder brother's lifeblood be able to have intimate interactions with his lifeblood? Although it's deranged, it's very touching. It inexplicably made me imagine scenes like a temple H, a rockery H, a boudoir H, and so on. Ahem, in the future. I'll stop when it's appropriate. It's just that I'll stop when it's appropriate. Right now, everyone is pulling lampposts. It's time to test your imagination. Chapter 52. The Lin clan was still smiling as they helped their daughter comb her hair and tried on the hairpin, but after a quarter of an hour they began to look outside. Half an hour later, their faces were distorted, so they sent a servant girl to look for it. Shopkeeper Qian opened the remaining red lacquer boxes and eloquently introduced their jewelry. which eased the awkward atmosphere. After a short while, Mama Kim came in with a box. "Why did you take so long?" the Lin clan questioned in a deep voice. Yu Miaochi was holding a golden hairpin and putting on makeup in front of the mirror, as if she hadn't heard anything. Madam Miss 3 searched for a long time before finding this box. She said she wanted to give it to second miss, so she was delayed. Mama Kim handed the box over and found that it was covered in dust. It was obviously something that Yu Xiang had abandoned. She felt very embarrassed and quickly wiped the dust off with her sleeve. Mrs. Lin's originally gloomy face was now dripping with water. Just as she was about to reprimand them for going too far, shopkeeper Chen exclaimed, "Aya, isn't this our Jinsho Pavilion's one and only Luan and Phoenix circling pearls golden buyao? Not to mention that each of the 3 eastern pearls on the buyao is the size of a longan, which can be considered rare in the world. Just this box alone is expensive. This box is carved from a whole piece of Phoebe Jinan wood, and the lid is inlaid with several begonia flowers. The petals are cut and pieced together with the best red jade. The color is tender and beautiful, and it looks like a real flower under the sun. It makes people want to reach out and touch it." As she spoke, she took the box and turned it in the light. She clicked her tongue in admiration. 2-3. Miss Yang is so generous. This box alone is the treasure of our shop, not to mention the ornaments. Even if we sell each eastern pearl separately, it will cost this much. She stretched out a hand and shook it. Today was strange. Marquis Yongla had a second miss who appeared out of nowhere, and said that she was Miss Yang twin sister. The two of them didn't look the least bit alike, and their temperaments were completely different. She didn't know where they came from. She didn't care as long as she could earn money. Shopkeeper Qian muttered in his heart, but on the surface he praised Yu Xiang's gift. Only then did the Lin clan's gloomy expression soften a little. He handed over the matching cards and said, "Take the matching cards and withdraw the money. Thank you for your patronage, madam. Next time if you need anything, just send someone to call this commoner woman. This commoner woman's things can be considered one of the best in the capital. I definitely won't let madam down." Shopkeeper Qian smiled as she received her tile. After she left, she let out a sigh of relief. The Lin clan ordered Mama Kim to put away all the jewelry on the table. When they turned back, they saw their daughter crying over the open begonia box. "Cheer, what happened to you? Who made you unhappy?" She hurriedly walked over and pulled her daughter into her arms to pat her. "Mother, this box alone is so valuable, not to mention the jewelry inside." She closed the box and pushed it away. Her tears fell even more fiercely. "And when I was in the family shun, I never even saw what Dongzhu looked like. For me, those were things that I could only hope for but could never obtain. It was a life that I would never dare to live. But what was the truth? In fact, these things originally belonged to me, but she took them all away. Mother, I even have to report to her when I buy some clothes and jewelry. Am I really the legitimate daughter of the Marquis family? If I have to live under her whims in the future, why would I come back? It would be better to send me back." The more she spoke, the more upset she became. She untied a pouch from her waist and choked with sobs. "Mother, other than you, who else in the Marquis family cares about me? Look at what grandmother gave me. It's just a protective talisman. A protective talisman that can be bought with a single copper coin from a temple, but she gave it to me as a meeting gift. She despises her daughter from the bottom of her heart." In fact, Yu Miaochi misunderstood. This protective talisman wasn't something that could be bought with a single copper coin. It was a protective talisman that was personally written and consecrated by the Han Dynasty's divine monk, the Kuhai monk. If it was taken out, it would be a good thing that everyone would fight over. Fortunately, Yu Xiang had a good relationship with the Kuhai monk over the years, so he made an exception even though he had stopped writing for 10 years. Unfortunately, the old madam's painstaking efforts were all fed to a dog's stomach. Not only did Yu Miaochi not appreciate her kindness, she even secretly hated her. When the members of the Lin clan heard this, they couldn't calm down. While cursing the old madam for being biased, they walked out of the room and threw the protective talisman into the brazier that was burning the yellow joss paper. When the flames licked the talisman, it emitted a strong fragrance, but it disappeared in a flash. She turned back and hugged her daughter. Gnashing her teeth, she whispered, "Sure, don't worry. From now on, Mother won't let you suffer the humiliation you suffered today. In any case, Mother is still the mistress of the Marquis household. After being idle for 14 years, it's time for me to take control of the household again. It's not certain who will live under whose nose. Mother, only you treat your daughter the best. Your daughter can only rely on you. Yu Miaoqi threw herself into her arms and sobbed. Her tear-filled eyes quickly flashed with a dark light. Mama Kim had a stomach full of words to say to persuade her master, but she discovered that the second miss had already said everything she wanted to say. If her master took control of the household again, she would be the Marquis household's respected steward. How much money would be waiting for her? Thinking of this, she couldn't suppress the joy in her heart. She quickly used her handkerchief to cover the smile on her lips, but the corners of her eyes drooped as if she was very sad. In the main courtyard, the matriarch was flipping through a scripture book when she saw Wan Qiu come in with a solemn face. He whispered something into Mama Ma's ear. She could vaguely hear the words "Madam, burn it, dislike it." Mama Ma's expression changed greatly, and the hand holding the handkerchief unconsciously trembled. "What are you saying? Let me hear it too?" The matriarch turned a page of the Buddhist scripture and slowly opened her mouth. Mama Ma sent Wan Qiu away with a hesitant expression. The matriarch sneered. "Is the Lin clan up to no good again? Speak." Mama Ma knelt at her feet and sorrowfully said, replying to the old lady, "Miss said that you disliked her and gave her a gift of a protective talisman that could be bought with a copper coin from the temple." Madam was furious when she heard this and threw the talisman into the fire and burned it. Ever since the matriarch found out about her granddaughter's fate, she had sent Yu Xiang to ask for the talisman and enshrined it in the Zhanggua temple. Every day, a senior monk would chant sutras to bless the talisman. This enshrining of the talisman lasted for 4 years. Every month, the incense oil offered to the Zhanggua temple cost 200 taels of silver, all of which came from the matriarch's own pocket. Not to mention her sincerity, just the money added up to more than 10,000 taels of silver. How could she burn it all in one fire? You burned it, but you had to slander the matriarch verbally. What kind of heartless and ungrateful person is this? Anyone who had a trace of respect for the matriarch wouldn't do such a thing. Mama Ma hated that she couldn't rush to the main room and give the Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi 2 slaps each. However, the matriarch didn't get angry. Instead, she chuckled softly. When she spoke again, her voice was filled with vicissitudes of life. Yandere was right. That Yu Miaoqi has a cold temperament. She holds grudges and doesn't remember kindness. I should stay away from her. No matter how I treat her, how can I compare to the Chun couple who raised her? She could even abandon the Chun couple just like that. How could she remember my kindness? Forget it, forget it. In the future I won't do this kind of thing. After raising her for a year or so, I'll marry her off. She's just like you see you. She's also a troublemaker. Mama Ma repeatedly nodded. After deliberating for a while, she said, "That girl also said that Madam might want to snatch the power of the family from Miss Xiang'er. The old lady, what do you think?" Hearing this, the matriarch was truly furious. She coldly snorted, "The power of the family? With just her? The current Marquis household isn't the same as the Marquis household during the Junjie era. With her little ability, I'm afraid she won't be able to handle it. However, if she dares to open her mouth, I can fulfill her wish." Mama Ma was greatly alarmed when she heard this. She reminded the old lady, what if something goes wrong? Just as the matriarch said, the current Marquis Yongla was very different from the past. Although Yu Pinyin had the title of General of the Light Cavalry, he had already returned the tiger tally to the emperor. He wholeheartedly wanted to be the emperor's sword, cutting through thistles and thorns to advance forward while bathed in blood. In order to pave the way for the crown prince to ascend the throne, the emperor had already gotten rid of a few princes with different surnames. In the coming year, he would make his move against the entrenched and complicated aristocratic families. Under this situation, Marquis Yongla could only be a solitary official. He definitely couldn't associate himself with any party. Not only did Yu Pinyin have to control this, but the interactions between the women in the inner compound also couldn't cross the emperor's bottom line. In the past, Yu Xiang had done very well. In the matriarch's opinion, he couldn't be any better. She didn't expect Xiang to be so intelligent. She could even figure out the emperor's intentions so thoroughly. She didn't even need to remind her. Before the Lin clan became muddled, they were very clever and capable. However, that kind of cleverness was limited to the inner compound's small calculations and careful schemes. They couldn't compare to Xiang-er's broad horizons. If this family was handed over to the Lin clan, there would definitely be trouble. The matriarch thought it over, then waved her hand and said, "If she dares to open her mouth, then let her handle it. Xiang-er and I will watch from the side. Nothing big will happen." Xiang-er managed the Marquis household with an iron fist. She had learned it from her brother. With the Lin clan's petty tricks, it will collapse in just a few months. All these years, she has stubbornly stayed in the main room and indulged in the past. I can't find anything wrong with her. This time I'll let her run wild. Once I find something to use against her, I'll have her take the divorce letter and go home. Her maiden family won't be able to say anything. After hearing this, Mama Ma finally understood the matriarch's plan. That's right. Missing her late husband wasn't a mistake. The old lady didn't want to tolerate the Lin clan anymore. After 14 years, she should be reaching the end of her tolerance. Master Ho. Mama Ma couldn't help but remind her. You should go ask Yandere if he still recognizes the Lin clan as his mother. The matriarch sneered. Previously, she didn't make a big fuss because she was worried about her grandson's face. This time, after bringing back Yu Miaoqi, she finally saw her grandson's true heart. She was afraid that her grandson didn't want to recognize the Lin clan anymore. He also didn't want to recognize Yu Miaoqi. Otherwise, how could he have such an indifferent attitude? She doesn't recognize Master Ho. Naturally, Master Ho won't recognize her either. She doesn't have Master Ho in her heart. All she thinks about is Second Mississippi. She doesn't even think about who earned her good days all these years. Mama Ma shook her head and sighed. The matriarch also sighed deeply. She picked up a Buddhist scripture and chanted in a low voice. In the main room, the Lin clan didn't know that except for Mama Kim and her 2 daughters, the rest of the servants in their courtyard had become the matriarch and Yu Xiang's informants. They still thought that they were the old matriarch who always kept their word. They didn't hide anything from others at all. Yu Miaoqi didn't know the inside story. Seeing her act so recklessly, she also relaxed. The mother and daughter discussed how to tell the matriarch. They didn't sleep until 8:45. Chapter 53. When mother and daughter arrived, the matriarch was in the middle of her morning ritual. Anyone in the Lin clan who was observant would know of the matriarch's habits over the past 14 years. However, she was not observant and could only lead her daughter to sit in the side hall and wait. After pouring 2 pots of tea, she saw Mama Ma supporting the matriarch, who was covered in the scent of Buddhist incense, out. It's been 14 years. This is the first time you've paid your respects to me, right? It's truly rare. The matriarch leaned on the couch and slowly sipped her tea. However, she didn't even look at the Lin clan. The first time in 14 years that she had paid her respects? Then what had her mother been doing these past 14 years? Yu Miaoqi glanced at the Lin clan in astonishment. Only now did she understand why the relationship between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was so stiff. The Lin clan was rather embarrassed. Just as they were racking their brains to think of how to please their mother-in-law, they saw Yu Xiu walk in with morning dew. Seeing the matriarch, she was slightly surprised and immediately bowed in greeting. This gave the Lin clan a way out. It was rare that her attitude towards the concubine-born daughter was warmer than before. She personally helped the concubine-born daughter up. The matriarch waved her hand for everyone to sit. Her gaze swept towards Yu Miaoqi's waist. She pretended to unintentionally say, "Where's the protective talisman I gave you? Why don't I see it hanging on your body? That was consecrated by a senior monk. It can ward off evil spirits and protect one's safety." Yu Miaoqi didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, she smiled sweetly and replying to grandmother, "Because it was a gift from grandmother, granddaughter doesn't dare wear it every day for fear of wear and tear. I only put it under my pillow to ensure that I sleep peacefully. Granddaughter thanks grandmother for her love and care." If the matriarch hadn't heard the news earlier, she wouldn't have been able to see any resentment or disdain from this extremely sincere smile. Not only was her temperament so cold, but she was also very good at pretending. How did the Lin clan raise her to become like this? Not to mention that she was born with a fiendish fate, but with her cold heart and cold lungs, she would be a disaster to any family. The matriarch didn't deny that she didn't like Yu Miaoqi because of the Lin clan's favoritism. However, at first she only wanted to compete with the Lin clan. When she saw the real person, that bit of dislike turned into 70 to 80% disgust. The more decent Yu Miaoqi behaved in front of her, the more it set off her treacherous and vicious nature. He had only given her a piece of talisman paper, yet she was already filled with resentment. How could she not hate Yandere, who had caused her to be imprisoned twice in the past? To what extent did she hate Xiang'er, who had taken over her position? Thinking up to this point, 70 to 80% disgust turned into extreme vigilance. Old Madame Fu felt uncomfortable even looking at her now, so she simply turned her head away and said in a low voice, "Do whatever you want. Just keep it." Yu Miaoqi had always been good at reading people's expressions. She pursed her lips and didn't say anything. You knew what to do and started chatting about this and that. She emphasized which families had gotten engaged, given the betrothal gifts, and were about to hold a wedding. The matriarch looked at her thoughtfully and said impatiently, "Don't talk to me about these miscellaneous things. Just say that you want to get married. You can't wait for me to discuss the marriage with the Feng family, right?" Yu Xiu's face flushed red. She lowered her head and forcefully stirred her handkerchief, not daring to respond. The matriarch's mood became even worse. She waved her hand and said, "I'll take care of this matter in the future. Just don't regret it. Since you've already achieved your goal, why aren't you leaving?" She felt a headache whenever she saw these two idiots who thought themselves clever. Yu Xiu bowed and took her leave. When she crossed the threshold, she couldn't help but reveal a trace of joy. When she was far away, Mama Ma quietly muttered, "Old madam, didn't that official Feng already get beheaded by Master Ho? His family's wealth was confiscated." The matriarch waved her hand, indicating for her to stop talking. When the Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other. They saw a light in each other's eyes. The matriarch didn't notice. Just as she was about to send the mother and daughter away, Yu Miaoqi got up and took her leave, saying that she was going to visit her younger sister. The Lin clan looked at their mother-in-law with a determined expression. Yu Miaoqi arrived at the west wing under the guidance of Bao Shang. There were two small courtyards in the west wing. They weren't too far from each other. The one facing the south had better lighting and occupied a larger area. Naturally, it belonged to Yu Xiang. The east wing belonged to Yu Xiu. Yu Miaoqi passed through the corridor and stepped through the drooping flower door. Everywhere she looked, there were all kinds of exotic flowers and plants in full bloom. There were also countless bees and butterflies fluttering in the brilliant sunlight, carrying with them an indescribable rich fragrance. Such a vibrant and colorful little courtyard should have been incompatible with the majestic and strict Marquis Yongla's residence, yet it strangely blended in. It was like a paradise of peach blossoms that had been lost in the mortal world. Yet it also seemed like a small greenhouse left in a frozen land, causing one to be incomparably delighted. Yu Miaoqi stood in front of the courtyard wall full of blooming flowers. She was somewhat intoxicated, but she was interrupted by a noisy voice. "Someone's here, someone's here. Miss, someone's here." She turned to look. It was the parrot, Alu, who was hanging in the corridor. Yu Miaoqi seemed to wake up from a dream. She walked towards the door with a feeling of jealousy and resentment. To think that as the legitimate daughter of the Marquis family, she could only squeeze in with her mother, but Yu Xiang had such an exquisite and dreamy courtyard. It was really unfair to the extreme. All of this should have belonged to her. Yu Xiang was shaken awake by Lulu early in the morning. In her daze, she heard that the Lin clan had burned the protective talisman and wanted to seize power. She said disapprovingly, "Let her be. I'll see if she has the ability." Then her head tilted and she fell asleep again. Lulu had no choice but to order someone to bring breakfast. She shook the fragrant shredded chicken and matsutake porridge in front of her master's nose. She didn't need anyone to wake her up. Unexpectedly, before the porridge was brought over, Alu shouted. Lulu hurriedly welcomed Yu Miaoqi into the side hall and said apologetically, replying to second miss, "Miss is currently sleeping. I'll have to trouble you to sit down and wait for a moment." This servant will go and wake her up. I'll also go take a look. I naturally want to take a look at Mimi's boudoir. Yu Miaoqi smiled very amiably and took the lead to step through the doorway. The room wasn't big, but the furnishings were very luxurious and exquisite. The antique porcelain on the antique shelves were all very old. The furniture was made of Phoebe Janon wood and rosewood, which were very expensive. The dressing table was very large with a bronze mirror, a makeup brush, a grate, and other things. There seemed to be a lot of things in the dressing table. The lid couldn't be closed and was only loosely hung with a bronze lock. A pillar of sunlight shone through the window, faintly reflecting the colorful lights inside. If she really opened it, she didn't know how dazzling it would be. Yu Miaoqi's smile became even more graceful and appropriate. In reality, the tip of her heart was bleeding drop by drop. Thick venom flowed out from the festering wound called jealousy, corroding her bones until they hurt. What time is it? Why hasn't Mimi woken up yet? The sun is almost up to your butt. She sat down on the soft couch by the window as she spoke in a teasing manner. Her soft, gentle, and melodious voice was extremely pleasing to the ear, and no one would be able to imagine that at this moment, a roaring ferocious beast was being imprisoned in her heart. Yu Xiang mumbled under Lulu's push. Only then did she wake up faintly. She lifted the bed curtain and yawned as she lazily said, "Mimi, you're here?" Seeing the girl's true face without makeup, Yu Miaoqi's heart was torn again. Without the rich colors, the girl's face was less fierce and more sweet. She had light and stylish smoky eyebrows, black and bright starry eyes, a straight nose and cherry lips. Her temperament was pure and charming. It was truly a very lovable face. In addition, her behavior was unruly and her temperament was perverse. When she slept, she didn't wear any undergarments. She only wore a small yellow doudou and a pair of tulle bloomers of the same color. This made her soft and round breasts even more prominent. Her waist was slender, and her skin was like cream. She was truly a stunner. Her appearance was so magnificent and her bearing was so excellent that it caused Yu Miaoqi's mind to fall into a daze, and two charming and gentle lines of poetry naturally appeared in her mind. Jade arms lift up the misty canopy, full of vitality and fragrance. Even a woman like her couldn't help but be moved, let alone a man. Fortunately, her legs were crippled. Otherwise, it wouldn't be difficult for her to enter the palace and become a favored concubine. Yu Miaoqi felt a burst of pain. She had unconsciously bitten her lower lip and quickly wiped the blood away with a handkerchief. Yu Xiang didn't know that she was thinking of many irrelevant things in an instant. She stretched out her hands and allowed Tao Hong and Lulu to help her dress. Then, with the help of the two people, she sat in a wheelchair and pushed it to the dressing table to wipe her face and teeth. She put the salted willow branch into her mouth and asked in a muffled voice, "Does Jejia like the hair ornament I gave Jejia? I like it very much. Today I especially came to thank Jejia." Yu Miaoqi stroked the hair ornament in her hair and smiled very sincerely. Yu Xiang didn't even look at her. She spat out the mouthwash and used a hot handkerchief to wipe her face clean. Then she opened a small bottle and smeared a finger of moisturizer on her face. The rich fragrance of lotus wafted through the room, making people feel a little dizzy. Yu Miaoqi knew that the stuff she applied must be extraordinary. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to cultivate such a body of ice and jade. If she hadn't hugged the wrong person back then, these things should have belonged to her. This sentence was like a curse that kept reverberating in her mind. Then it bound her heart round and round, sinking deep into her flesh and bone, and could never be removed again. Yu Xiang glanced at her from the bronze mirror and asked casually, "Where's the protective talisman that ancestor gave Jejia? Why don't I see Jejia wearing it?" "I put it under my pillow when I went out. After all, it's a paper product. I'm afraid it will be worn out if I wear it every day." Yu Miaoqi picked up the teacup to cover the disdain on her lips. It was just a piece of paper. Was it worth these two people mentioning it again and again? Yu Xiang raised her eyebrows and chuckled. "Jejia, didn't ancestor give you an exquisite pouch with a colorful silk ribbon tied to it? That means you can wear it around your waist every day. It's pretty and can press the hem of your skirt. Jejia, you don't know that the protective talisman was asked by ancestor from divine monk Ku Hai 4 years ago. It's been enshrined in the Zhengguo temple all these years. It's a good thing that many people can't get their hands on. At that time I was wondering why ancestor kept it, but it turned out to be a gift to Jiejie. It's clear that ancestor has always been concerned about Jiejie. Yu Miaoqi smelled a trace of jealousy in her words. Although she didn't show it on her face, she was very happy in her heart. But no matter how much she said, a piece of paper was just a piece of paper. What could it be worth? However, she was very satisfied that the old madam valued her. So she just had to find the pouch and wear it when she went back. After all, she was her granddaughter. How could she not love her? As long as she lived long enough, she would be able to surpass this lowly child in front of the old madam. Thinking of this, Yu Miaoqi's lips curled up slightly. Yu Xiang looked at her expression in the bronze mirror and felt her heart grow colder. If a normal person heard these words, they would more or less show a trace of regret for burning the talisman. However, she couldn't see the slightest bit of remorse or self-blame in the other party's eyes. Yu Miaoqi held grudges and didn't remember kindness. Sure enough, she was just as her brother described. She was an extremely cold-hearted person. So, even if she didn't want to fight with her, she was afraid it wouldn't do. The author has something to say. Thank you to my cute little creatures, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original novel. Moi. Chapter 54. Many thoughts ran through her mind, but Yu Xiang's hands didn't stop moving. After applying the moisturizer, she didn't need to apply anything else. She only smeared a bit of peach blossom powder on her cheeks, the corners of her eyes and her lips. Then she used a brush to lightly sweep her eyebrows. Afterwards, she used several peachwood hairpins to form a flower bun. She pinched a peach blossom flower ornament and stuck it between her eyebrows. Her simple peach blossom makeup was done. She tilted her head slightly to look at the beautiful figure in the bronze mirror. She really was more beautiful than flowers, as sweet as honey. She couldn't help but smile. As soon as she started to move, Yu Miaoqi had been watching her carefully. She secretly memorized every step she took. It said that 30% looks and 70% makeup. Not only was this person very good-looking, but her makeup skills were superb. It was also because she was in the marquis household. Otherwise, how could she have the leisure to think about it every day? Yu Miaoqi felt that she shouldn't think too much about it. If she thought too deeply, her hatred for Yu Xiang would increase. She couldn't hide it even if she wanted to. Yu Xiang was also secretly observing her through the bronze mirror. Suddenly, she pursed her lips and smiled. Jiejie, it's strange. You and I are twin sisters, but why don't we look like each other at all? I'm so beautiful, but Jiejie looks a bit dull. She gently stroked her cheeks as she spoke. She seemed to feel that her bluntness was a bit hurtful. She quickly covered her cherry lips with a handkerchief and looked apologetic. Actually, Yu Miaoqi wasn't bad-looking. She could even be said to be incomparably beautiful. However, when compared to the extremely gorgeous Yu Xiang, she paled in comparison. What people feared the most was comparison. Yu Miaoqi's gentle and elegant smile almost disappeared. She fiercely dug her nails into her palms before she calmly said, "There are plenty of people who have twins who don't look alike. There's nothing strange about it. I look like my mother, but who do you look like, Jiejie? Who do you look like? You're a bastard." Yu Xiang's smile grew even sweeter as she continued. "Of course I take after my older brother. Don't you realize that I'm 50% similar to my older brother?" With that, she turned her face towards her. Yu Miaoqi took a closer look and was shocked to find that she was indeed 50% similar to Yu Pinyin, especially the insufferably arrogant aura between her eyebrows. No wonder no one doubted her identity before she was 10 years old. The world was so big, and the capital and Lingnan were separated by thousands of mountains and rivers. She had nothing to do with family Yu, so how could she be like Yu Pinyin? What kind of luck could create such a coincidence? Yu Miaoqi's aura became slightly heavier. She suddenly became dissatisfied with the indifferent features that she inherited from the Lin clan. She was unhappy, but Yu Xiang was happy. She opened the dressing room and searched for a silk flower to wear in her hair. She felt that this one was not satisfactory, and that one was not suitable. In just a moment, there were many jewels piled up on the dressing table. They shone brightly under the sunlight, making people dizzy just by looking at them. Yu Miaoqi, who was angry, was immediately attracted to them. Yu Xiang played with a jasper hairpin in her hand and casually waved at her. "Jiejie, come here." Yu Miaoqi only hesitated for a moment before slowly walking over. She sat down on the embroidered stool that Lulu had brought over. Does Jejia like this hairpin? It matches Jejia's outfit very well today, Yu Xiang said as she inserted the jasper hairpin into her hair. She tilted her head and looked at it for a moment. Then she found a golden double-buckled bracelet and put it on her wrist. She praised, "Your jade wrist can't compare to a golden dipper. You're so thin, so thin. Jejia's wrist is so white and slender. It should be complemented by thick gold. Of course, top-grade jadeite or red jadeite would also be an excellent match." Yu Miaoqi unconsciously followed her thoughts and carefully savored her words. Yu Xiang gave Lulu a look. Lulu hurriedly brought over a needle and thread box. Inside it was a piece of ancient satin that had been cut into shape. It had a light purple background and was lightly drawn with silver thread. Not only did it look low-key and gorgeous, but it was also unusually soft to the touch. The cloth trembled slightly, and the aquatic plants, insects, and fish came to life. Yu Xiang draped the satin over her shoulders and said with a smile, "This is 3-layer ancient satin from Hangzhou. It's firm but not hard, soft but not tired. It's very elastic. It's used to make a tube-top dress with flowers and a chiffon tulle blouse. It's hazy and ethereal like a fairy. Jejia, do you like it?" Yu Miaoqi was fascinated by the scene she described. She lovingly caressed the satin and said absent-mindedly, "I like it." These expensive and luxurious clothes were absolutely impossible to find in the family shun. It wasn't that the family shun couldn't afford them, but that they didn't dare to use them even if they bought them. After all, the family shun was the lowliest merchant in the world. Yu Xiang smiled softly. She put her arms around her neck and rubbed her cheek intimately against her cheek. She coaxed, "If Jejia likes it, I'll give you all of these things. There's only one condition. Please stay away from my brother. My brother is mine alone. I can't share him with you." Yu Miaoqi instantly broke free from the intimate atmosphere she deliberately created. The absent-minded smile on her lips disappeared without a trace. She firmly shook her head. "I'm afraid Jejia can't agree to this. I'm the legitimate daughter of the Marquis family. My brother is also my brother. Why can you be close to me but not to me?" Yu Pinyin was the real master of the Marquis family. It was because of his protection that she could establish herself here. Why couldn't this bastard be close to her? It was simply unreasonable. A wave of anger burned Yu Miaoqi's heart, but she still pulled out a faint and elegant smile and continued, "Jejia, please understand me. I haven't seen my brother for 14 years. Yu Xiang put her arms around her neck and smiled. "That's right. 14 years have passed. What's the point of seeing each other again? It's the same even if you endure for another 14 years. After all, you'll reach the age of marriage. Since Jejia isn't willing to agree, then let's go. I should eat." She let go of her hand and expressionlessly took off her hairpin, bracelet, and satin. She waved at Lulu, who was sweating profusely. "Send second miss back." She turned her face mercilessly. Yu Miaoqi had traveled extensively with Father Shun, but this was the first time she saw someone change their face so quickly. She was dumbfounded. It wasn't until Lulu urged her twice that she came back to her senses. She forced herself to maintain an elegant demeanor and said, "Jejia, why are you making such a joke? You scared me. I'll come visit Jejia next time." She slightly nodded, lifted the curtain and slowly left. Lulu's face was red. She sent the master and servants out of the Chuehua gate before turning back and asking in a low voice, "Miss, why did you quarrel with second miss for no reason? You're all family." Yu Xiang ordered Tao Hong to push her to the dining table. She picked up the shredded chicken and matsutake kanji and sniffed it. She slowly said, "Who's family with her? Don't be fooled by her gentle smile. She's probably cursing me in her heart. Look at her behavior. She burned the protective talisman that old ancestor painstakingly begged for. Isn't it because she hates old ancestor for ignoring her for 14 years? Her heart is smaller than the tip of a needle. She spends her days in the nunnery, while I'm enjoying the splendor of the Marquis household. Don't you think she's jealous? Since I've already seen through her character, why should I feign civility with her? I might as well shed all pretense of cordiality as soon as possible. That way I'll feel more comfortable." Tao Hong was scared speechless. Lulu pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Someone with an indifferent and elegant temperament wouldn't be jealous. But looking at second Miss's appearance, she's been blinded by lard and hates her whole family. She's been cultivating in the nunnery for 14 years, but she hasn't achieved anything." "Isn't that so?" Yuxiang scooped a spoonful of porridge into her mouth and muttered silently, "It seems that the family Shen is really down and out. Otherwise, how could she have so much resentment?" Unfortunately, even if she guessed the inside story, Yuxiang didn't dare to send people to investigate the family Shan's whereabouts. She was afraid that Yu Pinyin would find out. She wanted to be his brother and sister for the rest of their lives. That way they could be together for the rest of their lives. Yu Miaoqi left the small courtyard. Her footsteps became faster and faster, but she suddenly stopped in front of a rockery. She placed her palms on the rock and gasped for breath. She was about to be angered to death by Yuxiang, but she couldn't vent her anger. Staying with her for only half an hour could shorten her lifespan by 10 years. She really wanted to tear her mouth apart. The two maidservants saw that there was no one around. One patted her on the back, while the other comforted her in a soft voice, "Second Miss, don't bicker with Miss 3. Her temper is like that. Even if her things are ruined, she won't let others touch them. Eldest Miss has suffered countless losses at her hands. Now, she's not even willing to set foot in her small courtyard. In the future, you just need to keep a distance from her." "How can my older brother be considered a thing? He's also my older brother. Why can't I get close to him? It's simply preposterous." Yu Miaoqi was unable to calm her anger. The two maidservants didn't know how to respond. Just as they were thinking about it, they saw Yu Pinyin striding over wearing a crimson official's robe. Yu Miaoqi also noticed him at the same time. She was stunned for a moment before forcefully pinching her palms. Her eyes were red as she greeted him. "Chur greets older brother." "Older brother, are you preparing to visit younger sister Xianger?" Yu Pinyin glanced at her. He didn't nod or respond and directly walked over. Although he wasn't the type to judge people by their appearance, he really couldn't bring himself to like this mournful face that resembled the Lin clan's. Yu Miaoqi was stunned. She reflexively tugged at his sleeve. Seeing his cold gaze sweep over her, she didn't need to put on an act as tears streamed down her face. She sorrowfully asked, "Older brother, I just wanted to ask you, are you really my biological older brother?" Yu Pinyin didn't have the patience to beat around the bush with her. He said in a low voice, "What do you want to say?" Yu Miaoqi's self-esteem was hurt by his cold attitude, and her tears fell even more fiercely. Tao Hong, who was about to go to the kitchen to get food, saw this from afar. He hurriedly tiptoed back to inform the others. This second miss was truly sinister. She was so quick to complain to Master Ho. Yu Pinyin was annoyed by her crying. He frowned and was about to leave. Yu Miaoqi finally felt his pulse and understood that he didn't like people crying. She hurriedly wiped her tears with her sleeve and quickly said, "Older brother, you're my biological older brother. Why doesn't younger sister Xianger allow me to get close to you?" What kind of logic is this? I've been longing to return to my family for the past 4 years, but all I've received is this cold treatment. What did I do wrong? Yu Pinyin finally looked at her. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Xianger doesn't allow you to get close to me?" Yu Miaoqi's eyes brightened. She held back her tears and nodded. "She said that older brother is only her older brother and can't share you with me. But clearly I'm the real." Because there were two maidservants who didn't know the truth, Yu Miaoqi didn't intend to let them know about her background before she could completely tame them. She swallowed back her unfinished words. Yu Pinyin lowered his eyes and pondered for a moment. The coldness on his face instantly disappeared. He shook his head and chuckled as he strode away. Looking at the direction he was heading in, it seemed Yuxiang's small courtyard. Yu Miaoqi was dumbfounded. She stood there blankly for a moment before regaining her senses. She asked, "What's with older brother's reaction? Is he angry or not?" Bao Sheng was a child of the Marquis family. He shook his head with certainty. "How could Master Ho be angry at Miss 3? He's just happy. Clearly, I'm the one who's being bullied. Why is he happy?" Yu Miaoqi bit her lip and a trace of blood dripped down. Bao Sheng was startled. He hurriedly wiped her mouth with a handkerchief and comforted her. Master Ho has always been like this. It doesn't matter if Miss 3 is in the right or not. In his eyes, the wrong person is always the other person. Miss 3 is good in every way. That year, Miss 3 severely injured a noble lady with a few whips. When that family came to seek justice, Master Ho almost chopped them up. Second, miss, you must not be angry with Miss 3. It's only right that you please her first. To say something unpleasant, if Miss 3 hates you, you won't be able to get anything good from Master Ho. In the future, if Miss 3 wronged you, you just have to endure it. Their 14 years of friendship is first, and they also saved your life. You can't compare to them. Okay. Yu Miaoqi almost broke her teeth from gritting them. She suppressed her monstrous anger and said in a low voice, I understand. In the future, I'll definitely get along well with younger sister. Let's go see big sister. Seeing that her complexion had returned to normal, the two maidservants helped her to the small courtyard on the east side of the courtyard. The author has something to say. Thank you to my rich and adorable creatures, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original novel. Moi. Seeing that there are dear readers who are urging me for the plot, I'll explain here. It's not that I'm deliberately delaying the plot, but that there are a lot of foreshadowing and details that need to be laid out. Otherwise, the plot won't be able to unfold later. This article will probably be written rather long, so I'll grasp the pace well. Chapter 55. Tao Hong ran back with an empty lunchbox and accidentally bumped into Lulu, who was about to step out of the room. Silly girl, where's our breakfast? Why did you come back with an empty lunchbox? Oh no, Miss 3 is really insidious. She went to complain to Master Ho. I just saw her holding on to Master Ho and crying on the way back. I don't know how many bad things she said about Mississippi. Is there such a thing? Lulu quickly turned around and complained to her master, who was busy eating. Miss, why did you fall out with her so quickly? She didn't provoke you. How are you going to explain it to Master Ho when he comes later? After all, she hasn't been home for 14 years. Master Ho will definitely feel sorry for her. Yu Xiang waved her hand disapprovingly, but her eyes kept moving towards the door. A quarter of an hour later, Yu Pinyin stepped through the door under the morning light and sat down at the dining table that was filled with breakfast. This shredded chicken porridge is very delicious. Older brother, do you want some? I'll feed you. Yu Xiang scooped up a spoonful of porridge and blew on it to cool it, then carefully brought it to her older brother's mouth. Her pretty face was pink and rosy, and she was smiling brightly at him while facing the morning sun. The salty smell of the shredded chicken porridge and the sweet smell of peach blossoms and lotus flowers wafted to his nose, greatly increasing his appetite. Yu Pinyin's Adam's apple moved slightly. He finished the porridge with the spoon in his mouth and asked, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Tell me, what bad things did you do this time? What bad things can I do so early in the morning? Yu Xiang lowered her head and stuffed a mouthful of porridge into her mouth. Yu Pinyin waited until she finished swallowing before he pinched her chin and turned her pretty face to him. He continued to ask, why don't you let Yu Miaoqi get close to me? Yu Xiang frowned. I don't like it. Why not? My heart hurts. We're both younger sisters. Why do you feel bad? I just feel terrible. My heart is throbbing with pain just like this. Yu Xiang really felt wronged. She picked up the whip hanging on the armrest of the wheelchair and lightly whipped her brother's arm. She said angrily, you liar, you said you only like me. You actually scolded me for Yu Miaoqi. Do you know how bad she is? She burned the protective talisman given by the old ancestor. Not only does she hate me, she also hates you. I don't know how much evil water she's hiding in her stomach, and she's planning to pour it out. You clearly told me to stay away from her, but you ran over to get close to her. You big liar. Yu Miaoqi's return had touched her sensitive nerves. She was afraid that one day, Yu Pinyin would like Yu Miaoqi more than her and drive her out. She pretended to be calm on the surface, but once she fell asleep, she would have nightmares about breaking up with her family Yu and being separated from her Yu Pinyin. She couldn't talk about this pain and had nowhere to vent it. This made her, who was already not very obedient, even more anxious. She only needed a little spark to ignite her anger. Yu Pinyin knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of her this time. It was still too early to wait for the little girl to understand. He could only hug her on his knees and tightly hold her arms. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When did I scold you? I was just asking a few questions. The one I like the most in my heart is naturally still you. It can't be the most. Yu Xiang stared at him with her big cat eyes and seriously corrected him. It's only like. Okay. Big brother only likes you. Yu Pinyin chuckled and pressed her delicate cheeks into his chest. His tone became very serious. If Big Brother also had a brother who was wandering outside, after finding him and bringing him back, would you like him or me? Of course I only like Big Brother. Big Brother is the one who gets along with me every day. Big Brother is the one who depends on me. Big Brother is the one who is intimate with me. How could it change because of an outsider? Yu Xiang answered without hesitation. Yu Pinyin was very satisfied with this answer, especially the definition of outsider. In this way, even if Shen Yuanqi temporarily took Xiang'er away in the future, Xiang'er wouldn't accept him for a while. The one she trusted, depended on, and loved could only be himself. Yu Pinyin was very happy for a moment. He laughed and said, that's it. Although we have the same blood flowing in our veins, Yu Miaoqi is just a stranger to me. Silly girl, why are you randomly getting jealous? Yu Xiang thought for a moment and also laughed. She broke free from her brother's arms and poured a few drops of vinegar on the steamed dumplings. She picked them up and stuffed them into her mouth. She said vaguely, I like to eat sour dumplings. It's none of your business. Yu Pinyin chuckled. He hugged her and finished the remaining half of the bowl of porridge. Lulu stood outside the window and peeped. His expression alternated between joy and sadness, resentment and anger. Tao Hong was stunned. He thought to himself, this person is calling me a silly girl, but he's becoming more and more silly. When Yu Miaoqi arrived at the east courtyard, her expression was very natural. She smiled and greeted Yu Xiu. She sat next to her and her eyes stopped on an unfinished veil in the sewing box. She picked it up and chuckled, Sister, are you embroidering the dowry? Why is there only one veil? Yu Xiu blushed. She snatched the veil and whispered, the embroiderer will help with the wedding dress. This veil is simple. I have nothing to do, so I embroider it to pass the time. Yu Miaoqi covered her mouth and joked, so sister's wedding date is near. Sister congratulates sister in advance. I wonder who is the son-in-law of our family? Yu Xiu was lacking a sister who would listen to her show off. She blushed and whispered. He is the Tanhua Lang of this year's imperial examination. He is from Yangzhou. His father is Minister Tongfang of the Salt Transport Commissioner. Although he is only a fourth-rank official, his family is rich and richer than many aristocratic families. He was personally appointed as the Zhizhou of Yangzhou by the emperor. He took office a month ago. Yu Miaoqi listened very seriously. She sighed in admiration. Tanhua Lang? Then he must be overflowing with talent and outstanding appearance. Sister, congratulations on finding such a good man. Since the marriage discussion, this was the first person who was happy for her. Yu Xiu was touched in an instant. She whispered to her, Sister, you flatter me. Fang Gongzi is indeed talented and handsome, but compared to this year's top scholar, Shen Yuanqi, he is still a bit lacking. The top scholar's appearance can be said to be peerless. He can almost compete with Big Brother. On the day he paraded his horse through the streets, many people were stunned. Flowers, purses, melons, and fruits were scattered all over the streets. Everyone loved beauty. Speaking of the top scholar, there were very few women who didn't praise him when they saw him. Of course, Yu Xiang, who could only accommodate one person in her heart, was an anomaly. Yu Miaoqi was playing with a hollow incense ball. When she heard the name that she had deliberately forgotten for a long time, her hand trembled and she threw the incense ball away. The calculations in her heart were all replaced by shock. The two maidservants standing at the door hurriedly went to pick it up. She secretly took a deep breath. When she opened her mouth again, her voice trembled slightly. Sister, you said that Shen Yuanqi is really that handsome? That person was also very handsome. In the past, he had charmed countless young ladies. The iceman who came to the family Shan to propose marriage had even stepped on the threshold. This was the truth and not an exaggeration. Yu covered her mouth and chuckled. Of course he is very handsome. I heard that when the emperor saw him, he even used a poem to describe a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. What an elegant and charming man's appearance. He is unique and outstanding. Everyone present laughed in agreement. Not only did he not feel awkward, he sat steadily and nodded with a smile. This caused the emperor to exclaim in admiration. Immediately, he was bestowed with a navy official's robe and became a scholar of the Imperial Hanlin Academy. He saved 4 years of exile and directly became an official in the capital. The emperor is really blessed. When the anecdote of the top scholar was mentioned, any family's daughter would say a few words. The more she listened, the more she felt that his behavior and bearing resembled that person. Yu felt that her heart was about to jump out of her throat. With trembling hands, she poured a cup of hot tea and continued to ask, "Sister, do you know where he is from?" "It's a very, very distant place. I vaguely heard someone mention it, but now I have forgotten. If sister is anxious to know, sister will send someone to help you ask around." Yu giggled. Yu hurriedly shook her head. No, I was just casually asking. Sister should concentrate on embroidering the dowry. You don't need to trouble yourself for me. It's getting late, I'll leave now. When she stepped on the ground, she couldn't help but sway. She felt that her head was heavy and her feet were light. If this Shin Yuanqi was really that Shin Yuanqi, who knew how he would deal with her now that he had a meteoric rise in his career? After all, she had taken Shin Yuanqi's life-saving money. If he revealed a word or half a sentence to others, how could she establish herself in the capital? No, there were many people in the world with the same name and surname. It might not be him. He had already signed a death contract and became a slave. How could he still have the qualifications to participate in the imperial examinations? Impossible. Her mood fluctuated several times. Yu took a deep breath and ran to the Lin clan for help. In the side hall of the main courtyard, the Lin clan waited for Yu to leave before suddenly kneeling in front of the matriarch. She firmly said, "Mother, I want to be in charge of the family." The matriarch's face didn't show any surprise. She half closed her eyes and asked, "After living in seclusion for 14 years, why do you suddenly want to be in charge of the family? Back then I begged you many times." The Lin clan said word by word, 14 years ago, your daughter-in-law had nothing to live for. 14 years later cheer came back. I have hope to live again. Everyone says that a mother is strong. Without waiting for her to finish speaking, the matriarch gave her a slap. She fell to the ground, her lips stained with blood. A mother is strong. You still have the face to say that a mother is strong in front of me. The matriarch sat up straight. She picked up the walking stick by the bed and used it to hit her. Back then, when Yandere was forced into desperate situations and needed your help, where were you? You want to live when your daughter comes back, but you want to die when your son is by your side. What are you thinking? Could it be that imaginary things are more precious than real people by your side? If you had dared to die with Junjie back then, I would have admired you. Now I'm disgusted by your attitude. You should be glad that you gave birth to a good son. Otherwise, my prefecture you wouldn't have been able to tolerate you. The Lin clan didn't dodge. She allowed her to hit him. Taking advantage of the time when she stopped to rest, she spoke again. No matter what, your daughter-in-law is awake now. Your daughter-in-law wants to support this family again, and let our son and daughter live peacefully and happily without any worries. How could she not want to reconcile with her son now? But it was obvious that her son didn't need her anymore. Her daughter was still so weak and helpless. This made her feel that her life wasn't completely useless. Worry about the future? You're the one who's worrying about the future. The matriarch sneered in her heart. She picked up the prayer beads and twisted them with her eyes closed. She didn't speak for a long time. The Lin clan didn't give up. She kowtowed 3 times and threatened, "If mother doesn't allow it, your daughter-in-law will run to that bastard and reveal her identity. Let's see if she still has the face to stay in my Marquis Yongla." The matriarch suddenly opened her eyes. Her expression was so fierce that she wanted to eat the Lin clan alive. After 4 years of companionship and leaning on each other, she had long regarded Yu as her own granddaughter. What she was most worried about was that she would distance herself from her and Yandere after learning about her identity, and then make a fuss about wanting to leave. As expected, Yu Miaoqi's return woke the Lin clan up. But they didn't wake up in the right place. They actually dared to threaten their mother-in-law. The matriarch took several deep breaths to suppress the urge to beat the Lin clan to death. Chapter 56. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law glared at each other without saying a word. The hall instantly fell into a dead silence. Mama Ma had already chased all the servants out of the courtyard and stood by the door to listen. After a long confrontation, the Lin clan was finally defeated. She kowtowed 3 more times and said sincerely, "If mother didn't force me, daughter-in-law wouldn't dare to do this. Mother didn't think about it. Yandere, Yuxiang, Chi and Siyu are all grown up and will soon have to discuss their marriage. It's not appropriate for Yuxiang to manage this family. Don't tell me you want an unmarried young lady like her to choose a husband for herself and her siblings? Wouldn't that be a joke? There are many social interactions that need to be done. She's not good at it, so how can it be convenient? Now that it's my turn to manage the family, it's the best. I guarantee that the marriages of the siblings will be handled properly and perfectly. When Lord Husband was still alive, wasn't mother always very satisfied with me? This time I beg you to give me a chance to turn over a new leaf. I really know my mistakes." After saying that, she kowtowed 3 more times. Her attitude was very humble. The matriarch closed her eyes and didn't say anything. After a full quarter of an hour, she opened her eyes and waved her hand. "Fine, I'll leave the family to you for the time being. However, I have to warn you in advance. You're not allowed to use your power to mistreat Xiang'er. And you're not allowed to make any mistakes. If I catch you in the wrong, take the divorce letter and go back to your parents' home. My prefecture you won't tolerate you anymore." The Lin clan believed that she definitely wouldn't make a mistake, and immediately nodded. Mother's teachings are right. Daughter-in-law will remember them. I just don't know when Yuxiang will hand over the account books, matching cards and storehouse keys to me? Seeing that she couldn't wait, the matriarch glanced at her mockingly and said slowly, "I'll have Xiang'er send the things to you later. Don't be anxious. Write a military order for me. If you make a mistake, you'll take the divorce letter and leave." "Thank you, mother, for your help. Your daughter-in-law will file a complaint now." Seeing that their goal had been achieved, the members of the Lin clan wrote down the military order without hesitation and then lifted their feet to leave. However, before they reached the door, they were stopped by the old lady. "Wait, I have to warn you. Don't secretly go to Xiang'er and reveal her identity. Do you think you can force her to submit to you and Yu Miaoqi? You're wrong. Xiang'er was personally raised by Yandere, so her temperament was exactly the same as Yandere's. They were both masters who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. If you make her unhappy for a while, she will go all out to make you and Yu Miaoqi unhappy for the rest of your life. If you don't believe me, go ahead and try." Needless to say, the members of the Lin clan really did have the idea of privately finding Yuxiang to reveal her identity so that she would know who was closer to her. However, once the old lady said this, she didn't know what to do. If what the old lady said was true, then Yuxiang was like a copper ball covered in spikes. Once touched, it would prick your hand. The only way to deal with her was to use a heavy hammer to flatten her. However, she had the protection of the old lady and Yu Pinyin, 2 great gods. Who would dare to use a heavy hammer on her? Even if they said a few harsh words to her and caused her eyes to turn red, Yu Pinyin would chop them up with a knife. The members of the Lin clan's hearts were filled with fear. They turned to look at Mama Kim. Mama Kim nodded slightly, indicating that the old lady was telling the truth. Yuxiang really had a fiery temper that couldn't be provoked. If they angered her, she could turn hostile and ruthless in a breath. It wasn't impossible for her to reveal the young Mrs. identity to the entire capital. The members of the Lin clan could only grit their teeth and agree. The Lin clan was clearly going to be in charge of the household, but it was as if they had lost a battle. They walked like they were floating and had no strength. Yu Miaoqi stood in the corridor to welcome her. When she saw this scene, she anxiously asked, "Mother, did grandmother refuse?" No, old ancestor agreed. The members of the Lin clan led their daughter into the room. After the 2 of them sat down, they sent all the servants away, leaving only Mama Kim to guard the door. They leaned close to each other and began to talk in private. Mother, you don't know, but that Yuxiang was so unreasonable. She actually warned me in front of me not to get close to my brother. What right does she have? That's my brother, not hers. Yu Miaoqi began to cry again when she spoke of this. She continued, I happened to meet my brother on the road and told him about this. He actually laughed and left. He didn't treat me as family at all. It really made my heart cold. It's fine, it's fine. You still have mother. The members of the Lin clan were furious, but there was nothing they could do. They could only hug their daughter and pat her. In the future, mother will be in charge of the household. You won't have to worry about her attitude anymore. Mother will definitely find you a good husband. He'll make you proud and have great wealth. Your brother is now a first-rank great general of agile cavalry. He has millions of soldiers in his hands. Even the princes have to be courteous when they see him, not to mention those nobles. With our family's status, you can even marry a prince's grandson as his official consort. Why bother with a cripple like her? She'll never be able to marry into a noble family in this lifetime. When your brother marries, I'll buy a small residence in the countryside and send her away. Regardless of whether it's a steward, a manservant, or a villager, I'll casually arrange for her. When that time comes, old ancestor and your brother will only be concerned about their new daughter-in-law and the newly born heir. How would they have the time to care about her? Just wait and see. She's glorious now, but she'll definitely have a bad ending in the future. Yu Miaoqi felt much better when she heard this. Her tears turned into laughter. Mother treats me the best. I didn't expect brother to be a great general of agile cavalry. I only know that he's a commander of everything. She didn't understand the politics of the previous imperial court. Moreover, he was a great general of agile cavalry. His authority was even higher than that of a commander of agile cavalry. For a moment, she was even more determined to have a good relationship with Yu Pinyin. Yuxiang was afraid that she would snatch Yu Pinyin away, so she was going to try. Because the commander of agile cavalry was an organization established by the emperor in recent years, the Lin clan had never heard of it before. Therefore, she shook her head and said, I don't know what that commander of agile cavalry does. It's probably a second-rank or third-rank position, so that your brother won't have nothing to do when he's not fighting. Your brother has such a high position and power, and the emperor's favor is generous. That bastard child naturally wants to be close to him. That's a good idea. Son, you also have to get along well with your brother. Let him understand who his true sister is. Although mother can help you a little in the inner residence, your future still needs to rely on your brother. I'll save it. Yu Miaoqi repeatedly nodded. After thinking for a long time, she said, Mother, can you send someone to investigate this year's top scholar, Shen Yuanqi? Why are you suddenly investigating him? Have you taken a fancy to him? The title of Zhuang Yuanlang sounds nice, but it's not good enough for my precious daughter. The Lin clan covered their mouths and laughed. Yu Miaoqi's face alternated between red and white. She waved her hand and said, That's not true. Daughter suspects that he's the legitimate son of the family Shun, which is my original older brother. If it's really him, I'm afraid that he'll reveal daughter's past or try to curry favor with our marquis household. We have to guard against that. Mother, you don't know, but he's now an attendant scholar of the Hanlin Academy. He's staying in the capital. It's already my, Marquis Yongla's, greatest benevolence not to eliminate the family Shun. He actually dares to try to curry favor with us? Speaking of the family Shun, the Lin clan was unable to restrain her anger. She gritted her teeth and said, Daughter, don't worry. If it's really him, Mother will definitely find a way to get rid of him. Mother, you mustn't take his life. Yu Miaoqi wished that she could kill everyone in her past, but her face showed that she couldn't bear it. The Lin clan patted the back of her hand with gratification. She smiled and said, Sure, you're really kind. The family Shin is so despicable and shameless, but you still care about that little bit of old affection. Forget it, I won't do anything to him. I'll just have your older brother come forward and kick him out of the capital, never to return in this lifetime. A mere attendant scholar of the Hanlin Academy dares to challenge me, Marquis Yongla. He simply doesn't know what's good for him. Yu Miaoqi was still worried. She hesitated and said, "Mother, will brother help me? He seems to dislike me very much." The Lin clan felt a little guilty, but she pretended to be strong. She smiled and comforted her. "I'm his mother. You're his younger sister. This is just a small matter." He wouldn't dare to refuse. It's not that he doesn't like you. He's like this to everyone. But he treats Yuxiang very differently. Yu Miaoqi's words were full of jealousy. Yuxiang saved his life once. Naturally, he's different from others. In the future, you two siblings will get along with each other, and your feelings will deepen. In the end, you're blood-related siblings. How could you be afraid that you can't surpass a bastard? My child, you mustn't worry. Everything will be fine. Mother will protect you. The Lin clan hugged her shoulder and patted her gently. "I know. Sure enough, only mother treats me the best." Yu Miaoqi gradually calmed down in the Lin clan's arms. She asked again, "Mother, I've made some inquiries. Yu Siyu's lover is the Tanhua Lang. His father is the Salt Transport Commissioner, Minister Tong Fong. I heard Mama Ma say that his family has already met with misfortune. Is this true?" The Lin clan had lived in seclusion for many years. They were completely clueless about the happenings in the capital. They didn't know anything, so they could only look at Mama Kim. Mama Kim bowed and replied, "Furin, this should be true. A few days ago, His Majesty conducted a thorough investigation of the salt tax and beheaded many corrupt officials. More than half of the Lianhuai's officialdom was cleared. The Salt Transport Commissioner and Minister Tong Fong is one of the most lucrative positions. That Fong family most likely won't be able to escape His Majesty's butcher's knife." Yu Miaoqi's eyes turned. She asked, "Then why is Yu Siyu still thinking about marrying over?" Grandmother actually agreed. "It's a long story. Eldest Miss definitely doesn't know the inside story. She was muddle-headed for a moment. In order to climb up to a wealthy family, she even threw away her reputation. How could the old lady not teach her a lesson?" Mama Kim recounted in detail what she had secretly found out about Fong Zhichen being arrested at night. In the end, she sighed. Don't be fooled by the old lady's words. Chapter 57. The Lin clan didn't expect Yuxiang to be so straightforward. Before they could finish their private conversation, 3 large chests had already been placed in the courtyard. There were labels on the chests. 2 of them were the account books of the imperial household, and 1 was the dowry book of the Lin clan over the years. Yu Miaoqi's eyes darkened when she saw the labels. She asked, "Mother, did you entrust your dowry to her as well? Didn't she already know the truth 4 years ago? Why was she still so trusting of Yuxiang?" The Lin clan felt very awkward when she heard this. She ordered the servants to move the chests into the room and explained, "For the first few years, I was unable to extricate myself from the pain of losing my husband. Therefore, the household affairs, the imperial household, and even the dowry were all handed over to the old ancestor to help manage. Presumably, the old ancestor also handed over the lands and shops that came with the dowry to her. However, I was completely unaware of this." Yu Miaoqi still couldn't let go after hearing this. She complained, "Grandmother already knew about her identity 4 years ago, but still handed over your dowry. It's clear that she trusted and loved her to the extreme. On the other hand, her attitude towards me was neither cold nor warm, neither distant nor close." The Lin clan hurriedly hugged her and comforted her. "My child, don't think too much. Isn't this because you weren't at home in the early years? The old ancestor was lonely and naturally needed someone to accompany her. Thus she was won over by Yuxiang. It's the same if you accompany her more in the future. Blood ties are there. There's no reason to be close to an outsider but alienate your family." Yu Miaoqi nodded and directly opened the chests that contained the dowry books. There were many account books neatly arranged inside, and the years were marked on the back pages. The head of the Lin clan took out one of the books and flipped through it. He sneered and said, "Put the account book aside for now. I'll look at it later. I have to check the dowry book carefully. If she did something to my dowry, I'll have to report it to the ancestor so that she can see the true face of this legitimate granddaughter." Yu Miaoqi's mind wandered, and she also took out a book and skimmed through it. She was shocked by the wealth of the Lin clan's maternal family. The dowry of land and shops was a bit too much. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was 10 miles of red dowry. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Mother, what does our maternal family do? How could he be so rich?" The Lin clan member laughed. "Your maternal family is also a merchant, but they are not lowly traveling merchants. Instead, they are imperial merchants appointed by the imperial family. They are specifically responsible for preparing porcelain, silk, and other items used by the imperial family. Your maternal grandfather is the only red-crowned merchant in the Han dynasty. That year, he once offered 5 million sure of grain to the divine ancestor, who was fighting outside to resolve the danger of losing the war. As a result, he was conferred the title of censorate of the Secretariat, and his status is very revered. Yu Miaoqi originally thought that merchants were all lowly people, but after hearing the Lin clan's words, she realized that there were actually godly people who could achieve the pinnacle of being a merchant. And her maternal grandfather was the only outstanding one. The slight discomfort in her heart instantly dissipated, and she said with a smile, "So my maternal grandfather is actually so powerful. Should I take the time to pay him a visit?" The pride on the Lin clan member's face faded, and he sighed. "Your maternal grandfather passed away long ago. Now your eldest uncle is in charge. Let's talk about visiting another day." The Lin clan was originally the eldest legitimate daughter of the Lin clan, but the current head of the Lin clan was her eldest concubine-born brother, who she looked down on the most. Her younger brother was a wastrel. Because he took too much 5 minerals powder, his bones were damaged, and he couldn't have children in this lifetime. As a result, he lost the right to inherit. Because she helped her younger brother fight for power, she had a falling out with her eldest concubine-born brother, and she hadn't returned home for a full 20 years. Her younger brother was now living on his own, and the few remaining family assets had long been squandered away. From time to time, he would find Marquis Yongla to ask for money. Yu Xiang was very generous every time she gave money, and she used all of the Lin clan's dowry. This caused her youngest uncle to nod and bow when he saw her. His attitude was flattering, as if he was treating his own ancestor. However, the Lin clan was completely unaware of these things. Yu Miaoqi saw her gloomy expression and didn't dare to ask more. She thought that she would privately ask Mama Kim for more details, so she smiled and said, "Then let's do it another day. I won't hide it from Mother. When I was in the family Shen, I often helped Shenshur look at the account books. If Mother is too busy, I can help." "Oh, my daughter is actually this capable? Then that's good. Let's immediately carefully examine these account books. If there's a problem, we can bring them to the old ancestor to discuss it." The Lin clan took out all of the account books and began to examine them from the beginning according to the year marked on the spine. Yu Miaoqi picked up the abacus and looked at each line, calculating one line after another. Her speed was very shocking. Because the mother and daughter wanted to find fault, they repeatedly checked each number. When they were halfway through the examination, they really did find quite a few areas with large deficits. The mother and daughter immediately became spirited and continued to examine. The accumulated deficits had reached an inconceivable level. There were even 5 prosperous shops in the capital that had been sold for no reason, and the silver that had been obtained had disappeared. The Lin clan was so angry that their teeth were chattering. They slapped the table and cursed, "What a little bastard child. She actually dared to sell my dowry in private. No wonder she lived so extravagantly. Turns out she dug out my flesh and blood to make up for it. Good, good, good. Mama Kim, take the account books and go to the old ancestor. While you're at it, call Master Ho over as well. In front of them, I want that little bastard child to spit out everything that she ate from me." Mama Kim solemnly agreed. She called over 2 servants to take the account books and leave. Yu Miaoqi slightly lowered her head and used her handkerchief to cover the gloating smile on her face. This Yu Xiang was really bold. She actually swallowed a huge amount of 100,000 taels. Who knew what she spent the money on? If she was forced to spit it out, the scene would really be ugly. When she thought about how this silver was supposed to be her dowry, but it was all swallowed up by that bastard child, her eyes gradually turned cold and her joy immediately disappeared. The Lin clan pulled her up and left. She suddenly came back to her senses and waved her hand. Wait a moment. I'll put on the embroidered pouch that grandmother gave me. She took out the embroidered pouch from her sewing box and casually folded a piece of paper before putting it inside. Only then did she tie it around her waist and follow the Lin clan to the main courtyard. In the small courtyard of the West Wing, Yuxiang returned from accompanying the matriarch to recite scriptures. She played with the parrot Alu in the corridor for a while. Then she moved the budding peonies from the flower bed into a flower pot. She washed her face and half leaned on the soft couch to rest. Lulu looked at the hourglass and realized that it was her master's usual afternoon nap time. She tiptoed over to remove the silk flowers, pearl hairpins, and other things from her hair. Just wear it. I'll sleep for half an hour and won't be able to press it down. Yuxiang raised her hand to stop her. It's more convenient to remove it. It's more comfortable to lie down and sleep. If you sit like this, your waist will hurt later. In a while, someone will come looking for trouble. How can I fight them when I'm sleepy? It's better to sit for a while and rest. As if she thought of something interesting, Yuxiang covered her mouth and chuckled. Before Lulu could speak, Tao Hong cried out in surprise, "Looking for trouble? Who in the Marquis household would dare to look for trouble with Miss? Are they tired of living?" Yuxiang pointed in the direction of the main room, her face full of contempt. Lulu was even more puzzled and asked why. Didn't we already hand over the power of the household? We don't have anything left here. Yuxiang simply stopped sleeping. She ordered Tao Hong to bring her a plate of melon seeds. While eating, she said, "She's such a selfish person. She's definitely more concerned about her own dowry book than the household. Coincidentally, there's a problem with her dowry book. The deficit is very large, and she hates me to the bone. She won't wait until she's finished reading all the books before she makes a fuss about it in order to slap me in the face." Deficit? Miss, you embezzled her dowry? Lulu was so scared that her face turned pale. She stammered, How much did you embezzle? The gold, silver, and treasures that Master Ho usually gives you aren't enough for you to spend? Why did you have to be so stubborn as to steal her dowry? If this matter really gets out of hand, you won't have anywhere to hide your face." Not only was Yuxiang not frightened, but she was also overjoyed. She threw the peeled melon seed shells at Lulu's head and joked, "The emperor isn't worried, but the eunuch is. Look at Tao Hong, he's so calm. Am I that greedy in your eyes? The good things that brother usually gives me are much more valuable than her dowry." That's because she's stupid and doesn't know the seriousness of the matter. Lulu bitterly patted the melon seed shells off her head. She thought, when Miss is valiant, no one can stop her. When she's unreliable, she's also really unreliable. It's hard to say whether other people would embezzle their mother's dowry, but when it comes to her, she really would do it. It's not because she's greedy, but purely to cause trouble for the Lin clan, who knew that even if she didn't embezzle it, those things were still left for her. Oh, maybe not anymore. The darling of the Lin clan is back, so Master shouldn't have a share of the dowry. Could it be that Master knew that this day would come, so she took the risk? Lulu fell into all kinds of imagination. Tao Hong glared at her and scolded, "You're the stupid one. Can't you see that Miss is so calm? This definitely doesn't have anything to do with Mississippi." Yuxiang patted Tao Hong's arm and praised with a smile, "My little Tao Hong is finally smart for once. I'm not afraid that she'll make a fuss. On the contrary, I'm afraid that she won't make a big enough fuss. In any case, the person who will lose face in the end won't be me." Before Miss took over, the old lady was in charge of the household. If it wasn't Miss's problem, then wouldn't it be the old lady's problem? It can't be, right? Lulu suddenly felt alarmed and frightened. She lowered her voice to the lowest possible level. "Miss, if the old lady has a problem, then this matter will become even more complicated. It'll be a shocking scandal. You have to quickly inform the old lady and suppress this matter." Seriously, why didn't you fill in the accounts first before sending them over? Yuxiang laughed even more happily and waved her hands repeatedly. "How do you know that I didn't fill in the accounts? I've already filled in the accounts long ago. It's just that she was blinded by lard and didn't recognize it. Since old ancestor dared to do this kind of deficit, she naturally wasn't afraid of others finding out. If the Lin clan slightly remembered our mother-daughter relationship and privately came to ask me about it, Or if they patiently read through all the accounts, then this matter wouldn't have blown up. But if she deliberately wanted to find fault with me and make me lose face, then she would definitely anxiously complain to Old Ancestor. Old Ancestor was testing her, or perhaps she wanted to ruthlessly punish her. In any case, no matter what Old Ancestor wanted to do, the Lin clan wouldn't be able to get away with it. Just wait and see. Let's see who loses face in the end. In any case, it won't be this pretty face of mine. She touched her own cheeks and lightly hummed a song. As soon as Lulu saw her wilted appearance, she knew that the Lin clan was going to be slapped in the face again. She couldn't help but sigh inwardly. They were clearly biological mother and daughter, so why did they make it seem like there was a deep hatred between them that spanned several lifetimes? Just because Miss was born to jinx Master Ho to death? This reason was too absurd. In 14 years I've never seen Miss jinx anyone. Also, where did that second Miss pop out from? She looked just like the Lin clan with a face full of bad luck. With that mother and daughter together, the Fu probably wouldn't have any peace in the future. The author has something to say. Thank you to my rich friends, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original novel. Mwax! I haven't forgotten about you today. I'm so gratified. Chapter 58. It wasn't easy for the Lin clan to get hold of Yu Xiang's weakness. Even if they offered to send her to the countryside to make the purchase, Grandmother Dowager and Yu Pinyin wouldn't be able to say anything. How could a daughter be so impatient to embezzle her mother's dowry? In other words, if she could embezzle even her mother's dowry, what else could stop her greed? Such inferior behavior was enough to suppress Yu Xiang until she couldn't raise her head. Even if Grandmother Dowager and Yu Pinyin insisted on protecting her, she wouldn't be able to run rampant in the future. The more the Lin clan thought about it, the more pleased they became. Their footsteps quickened, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived at the entrance of the main courtyard. Yu Miaoqi followed closely behind. Mama Ma, who was standing in the corridor, saw the two of them and quickly entered the room. She whispered, "The old lady, they really came." Humph! Grandmother Dowager gently twirled her prayer beads and slowly said, "They only waited for 2 hours before coming here. They're too impatient. I'm afraid they didn't even look at the account books after that." Mama Ma lowered her head and didn't dare to answer. She knew that there would be a commotion in the room soon, so she gave Wanqiu a look, hinting for her to get rid of all the irrelevant people. Make a fuss, make a fuss. How much trouble has she caused in just 2 days? Let me count. Grandmother Dowager put down her prayer beads and calculated with her fingers. Her smile grew colder. She's indeed a jinx. Since she came back, there has been no peace in the family. I thought she would be able to persuade the Lin clan to stop, but I didn't expect her to be even more restless. All she wants is to fight for the family's favor and the family business. Does the Lin clan not favor her enough? She dares to set her sights on the family business. What does she think of my yen? If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have brought her back in the first place. Grandmother Dowager shook her head and sighed. Mama Ma comforted her softly. You're not that cold-hearted. How could you watch your granddaughter wander outside and not bring her back? It's also because she's young and frivolous. If you wake her up and slowly train her in the future, you'll be able to cut her into a new shape in a year or 2. Train her? With her inferior character, it would be useless even if I trained her for a few hundred years. This was a sign that her roots weren't good. She had inherited the teachings of the Lin clan. In the end, it's all my fault. It's all my fault for not being able to see through people back then. I welcomed such an unreliable person into the family, and even gave birth to a little jinx. That's why there's no peace in the family now. The more the matriarch spoke, the angrier she became. She was just waiting for the Lin clan to come in and deal with her. Mama Ma was about to reply when Wanqiu reported from outside the door. The old lady, Madam and second Miss are here. They said they have something urgent to discuss with you. Let them in. The old lady waved her hand impatiently. After entering the house, the two of them greeted each other. That's enough. If you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to bow to me. I'm afraid my lifespan will be shortened. Before the Lin clan could complain, old Madame Fu had already scowled angrily. She hesitated for a moment. Yu Miaoqi knew that there was no room for her to interrupt. She picked up a stool and sat down. Then she secretly tugged on the Lin clan's sleeve. The Lin clan quickly calmed down and sat next to their daughter. She said, "Mother, let's wait for Yandere and Yuxiang to arrive first. This is a serious matter. I'm afraid that someone will say that I've wronged her behind her back." The old lady was so angry that she laughed. She asked, "Do you want to call Siyu over as well? This is a serious matter. Why don't we let the whole family hear about it?" That's good too. The Lin clan was still a little guilty at first. However, when they thought about the account books that had been holed out one after another, they became strong-willed for once. The old lady gestured for Wan Qiu to call them over. Then she closed her eyes and twirled her prayer beads. Mama Ma, who was standing by the door, looked at the mother and daughter with pity and mockery. Then she lowered her head to reduce her presence. She even called Master Ho over. Even if she wanted to die, this was not the way to go. After living in seclusion for 14 years, she had worn away all of her intelligence and ability. All that was left was a head full of mush. The hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The air was filled with the faint but elegant scent of Buddha. It was supposed to refresh one's mind, but for some reason it made one feel a little depressed. Yu Miaoqi rubbed her chest. There was a slight feeling of uneasiness in her heart that could not be ignored. She had clearly said that she would take it slow and slowly gain a foothold in the Marquis household. However, on the second day, she had seized control of the household and was now competing with Yuxiang. Wasn't her actions a little too big? Wouldn't her table manners be very ugly in the eyes of others? Her heart trembled. Only then did she realize that she had been blinded by jealousy and had made the wrong move. She should have taken it a little slower. At least, she should have won over the old lady and Yu Pinyin. However, since she was already here, she could only carry out her mistake to the end. Fortunately, Yuxiang's mistake was even bigger. The old lady and Yu Pinyin knew that there was absolutely no reason to indulge her. If she could even steal the Lin clan's dowry, then she must have embezzled a lot of the central household. If she had thought of this earlier, she would have finished looking through the central household's accounts before bringing them over. The more Yu Miaoqi thought about it, the more mistakes she made. Her rosy face gradually began to pale. She couldn't help but pinch the pouch at her waist. The sound of something tearing caused the old lady to open her eyes. She raised her eyebrows and said, "You're finally wearing this protective talisman? Since grandmother gave it to me, I naturally have to carry it with me. Previously I was obsessed with it and was actually a little reluctant to part with it. Who knew that grandmother wouldn't ask for a new one if it was worn out? Grandmother's love and care for you is something that your granddaughter doesn't dare to forget." These words were so sweet that they could practically drip honey. However, the old lady's face did not have the slightest trace of happiness. She only used a gloomy, oppressive and hair-raising gaze to stare at her. Yu Miaoqi lowered her head, as if she had been electrocuted. Her heart suddenly thundered like a drum. She vaguely realized that she had said something wrong, but she couldn't figure out what she had said. Could it be that the old lady already knew that I burned the protective talisman, so she tested me several times? As soon as this thought appeared, it caused her breathing to stop. If that was the case, it would be extremely difficult to win over the old lady in the future. In the old lady's mind, she was probably already a two-faced, hypocritical and pretentious character. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Why was every step wrong? Could it be that this step was wrong again? After thinking about it several times in her mind, Yu Miaoqi felt like she was sitting on a board of nails. She wanted nothing more than to fly away. Just at this moment, two servant girls pushed Yuxiang into the room. She nodded at them one by one in greeting. The Lin clan coldly snorted. Their gazes were as sharp as knives as they pierced her. The old lady lightly patted the soft couch next to her and called, "Xiang'er, come sit with the old ancestor." The two servant girls carried her to the soft couch and tidied up her skirt. Yuxiang leaned against the Kong table. She turned the screen of the small Kong bed with one hand and propped up her chin with the other. She lazily asked, "Old ancestor, did something big happen at home? I was just about to take an afternoon nap. I can't even open my eyes right now." She blinked her clear cat eyes. A few strands of moisture stuck to her thick eyelashes. She looked both innocent and cute. The old lady rubbed her head and said, Wait for your older brother and sister to come first. Your mother has something important to announce. The old lady's tone seemed calm, but it actually hit a sinister chill. The Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi shifted uneasily. Yu Xiang nodded. She moved a plate of peanuts from the Kong table closer to her and began to peel them. She didn't eat them. She only pouted her red lips and blew off the inner layer of red clothing, leaving the round peanuts behind. For a moment, the only sound that could be heard in the silent hall was the cracking of peanut shells. There was also the sound of the red clothing curling up and falling to the ground. It was like a light snowfall. The cold and solemn atmosphere quietly dissipated amidst the cracking sounds. The old lady looked at her granddaughter, who was immersed in her work without a care in the world. Her stern face softened slightly. She then saw her granddaughter shove the handful of peanuts that she had painstakingly peeled into her hands and urged her to eat quickly. The old lady immediately smiled and lovingly pinched her cheeks. Although Yu Miaoqi was her blood-related granddaughter, she still couldn't compare to the granddaughter that she had raised herself. There was still a gap between them emotionally. At this moment, Yu Miaoqi finally realized that it was impossible for her to win the old lady's favor over Yu Xiang. Originally, she still had a chance when she first came back. However, she burned the old lady's protective talisman, and also burned the gentle image that she had painstakingly built. She could only blame herself for not understanding the situation in the Marquis household. The Lin clan wasn't the mistress of the household. Instead, their status was awkward and neither high nor low. Other than Mama Kim, everyone else in her small courtyard had probably become the old lady and Yu Xiang's informants. It was just the death of her husband, but she made it seem like the sky had collapsed. She was truly useless. The more Yu Miaoqi thought about it, the more she hated the Lin clan. Mama Kim had been ordered to invite Master Ho. At this moment, she was trembling in fear at the door of the study. Just as she was about to open her mouth, she was frozen by Master Ho's cold and indifferent gaze. She hurriedly lowered her head. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of the room full of portraits. Her heart trembled fiercely. She was very familiar with the people in the painting. They were all Yu Xiang's extremely beautiful face, from the age of 10 to 14. Some of them were crying, some of them were laughing, some of them were happy, some of them were sad, some of them were sitting, and some of them were lying down. All kinds of expressions and postures were so vivid and lifelike. Moreover, there was a strong sense of nostalgia flowing out from every stroke of the painting. Even people who didn't know how to appreciate paintings couldn't ignore it. Mama Kim thought about how her master intended to deal with Yu Xiang today. She had even asked Master Ho to be the judge. She was afraid that her master wouldn't be able to do as she wished. Not only would she not be able to do as she wished, but there would also be a rift between her and Master Ho. Mother and son weren't close to begin with. In the future, it would develop to the point where they would be at each other's throats. Thinking of this, she became more and more regretful. However, she had no choice but to obey her master's orders. She could only grit her teeth and continue to wait. Yu Pinyin stood behind the desk with an unfinished portrait spread out in front of him. A pair of beautiful eyes revealed a profound light under his repeated strokes. Only a little bit of cherry lips remained uncolored. He diluted the cinnabar, dipped it in a brush, and tested the color on the paper next to him. He felt that it was still too rich, so he diluted it a little more. He tested the color again and again before he dared to lightly dye the appropriate amount of cinnabar on the cherry lips. He had used his finger to stroke the small lips countless times in reality. In the portrait, he was also unable to move his eyes away. He stared fixedly for a long time until the ink at the tip of the brush was about to dry. Only then did he look at Mama Kim and ask, "What is it?" Mama Kim trembled and said in a low voice, replying to Master Ho, "Madam asked you to go to the main courtyard. She said that she has something important to discuss with you." "I'm not going." Yu Pinyin's refusal was very straightforward. As he spoke, he dipped the brush into the brush washer and stirred it. Mama Kim took a deep breath and continued, replying to Master Ho, "This matter concerns Miss 3. Please be sure to." Before she could finish speaking, the handsome youth threw down the brush and walked away with his hands clasped behind his back. As he passed by her, he glanced indifferently at her. Those deep eyes, which seemed to have been tempered for countless light years, didn't have a trace of human life. There was only the coldness of a storm. Chapter 59. After Yu Pinyin entered the room, he didn't look at the Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi. After greeting the matriarch, he bent down to pick up Yu Xiang and put her on his lap. Yu Xiang turned around to feed him a peanut, then continued to peel the shell. Don't eat it. If it's not peanuts, it's melon seeds. Be careful not to get heaty. Yu Pinyin snatched the plate of peanuts and had Mama Ma take it out. He ordered, pour a cup of cuting tea for Mississippi. Mama Ma agreed in a low voice, but then she heard Yu Xiang call out, cuting tea is too bitter. Add 2 spoonfuls of sugar. Seeing her brother squint at her, Momo stammered, No, add 1 spoonful. 1 spoonful is enough. Her brother's gaze was still full of disapproval. She struggled, half a spoonful, no less. As she spoke, she poked her brother's hard chest with her white fingertips. Yu Pinyin finally couldn't hold it in anymore. His cold eyes instantly melted into a pool of soft water. He helplessly said, add half a spoonful of sugar. He gently rubbed his sister's lips with his thumb. No wonder it was so sweet and delicious. He didn't know when she would be able to eat it. They really were a pair of quarrelsome lovers. It was fate that had been cultivated over 100 years. The matriarch shook her head and laughed. Her mood immediately improved. In the hall, the Lin clan mother and daughter had their heads lowered. No one knew what they were thinking. After a short while, Yu Xiu came in late, followed by Mama Ma, who was carrying tea. Greetings, old ancestor. Greetings, mother. What did you call me here for today? Yu Xiu's face was full of anticipation. She secretly guessed that they wanted to talk about her marriage. Sit down. Your mother has something to say. Let's all listen. The matriarch waved her hand and then looked at the Lin clan. The Lin clan downed a cup of tea, then opened the chest and took out the account books. She slammed them on the table and said in an agitated tone, Mother, take a good look at these account books. My dowry was actually more than 100,000 taels of silver, and 5 prosperous shops were also sold at a discount. If I hadn't recovered them in time, I'm afraid that in a few years, there would only be an empty shell left. I just want to know who's in charge of this house. How dare you play such dirty tricks? As he spoke, he glared fiercely at Yu Xiang. At this time, Yu Xiang was nestled in her brother's arms, sipping the tea that her brother fed her, as if she didn't hear her accusation. On the other hand, old Madam burst into laughter. Her voice was filled with suppressed anger. Lin clan, take a look at the back pages. The account books with problems are all from 21 years ago, when I was still in charge of the household. This is admitting to embezzling the dowry? Or did the old lady admit it herself? The Lin clan was dumbfounded. Of course, she clearly saw the year marked on the back pages, but she didn't even think about old Madam. Old Madam's maternal family was the most famous Confucian family in the Great Han Dynasty. Since the founding of the Great Han Dynasty, there had never been a person with bad morals. The strictness of her family's upbringing was evident. Old Madam herself was the model of a virtuous lady. She couldn't tolerate sand in her eyes. How could she do such a disgraceful thing? The Lin clan firmly believed that Yu Xiang had falsified the account books and shifted the deficit to Old Madam, so that they would mistakenly believe it was Old Madam who did it and suffer this grievance. She insisted on making a fuss because she wanted Old Madam to see Yu Xiang's true colors. However, she never expected Old Madam to admit it without a trace of hesitation. Why did she embezzle her dowry? Where could she spend it? It was simply inconceivable. Mother, even if you want to spoil your child, you shouldn't spoil her like this. You actually helped her take on such a big matter. The Lin clan cried out in exasperation. Shut up. Old Madam raised her teacup and fiercely slammed it on the ground. The loud bang seemed to directly hit their hearts, and it shocked everyone into silence. Yu Xiang buried her face in her brother's arms and tightly wrapped her arms around his thin and strong waist. Yu Pinyin thought she was afraid and quickly patted her back. He lowered his head and was about to say a few comforting words when he saw her secretly winking at him. Her small appearance revealed a wilted and mischievous look. Yu Pinyin almost couldn't hold back his low laughter. He lovingly and pitifully pinched the tip of her nose and mouthed silently, "Naughty." Yu Miaoqi hid behind the Lin clan, feeling more and more nervous. When Yu saw that the Lin clan wanted to make trouble for Yu Xiang, she was originally rejoicing in their misfortune. Who knew that the situation would suddenly take a turn for the worse? Old Madam actually personally admitted that she embezzled the Lin clan's dowry. This shocking secret scared her half to death, and she couldn't help but feel distressed. Old Madam saw that the Lin clan's faces were deathly pale and couldn't say anything, so she continued, "Do you know why I embezzled your dowry?" In the 10th year of Chongkong, Yandere entered the palace to participate in the Crown Prince's study companion, and needed a large amount of money to bribe him. In the 14th year of Chongkong, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th branches came to our door to cause trouble. Yandere and I were really weak, so we spent a large amount of money to bribe the clan elders. In the 16th year of Chongkong, the 3rd branch set up a vicious scheme to frame Yandere for murder and bribed him with another sum of money. From the 17th to the 19th year of Chongkong, Yandere was poisoned 3 times and his life was in danger. Just the medical fees alone took away more than half of the family's wealth. After Junjia's death, the 1st branch was already in a precarious situation, and there were a bunch of jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards waiting to take over the Marquis household. Under these circumstances, even the 120 sets of dowry I brought had already been used up, but you only touched a layer of skin. That year, I personally asked you if I could borrow some of your dowry, and you even nodded and agreed. What, now you're going back on your word? That's right, when Yandere was on the verge of death several times, you burned yellow joss paper in your room. When Yandere went to the battlefield, you were embroidering portraits. When Yandere became a commander-in-chief, when he was tortured to kill people and lost his good fortune, all you wanted to do was to bring your daughter back. When Yandere needed you, what were you doing? Do you still think of him as your son? Now that your life is better, you come here to denounce him. You don't even know whether you're worthy or not, and whether you have the face to open your mouth. Right now, when I see you, I feel disgusted. If Junjia knew in the underworld, he would definitely ask a ghost messenger to send you a letter of divorce. Do you believe it or not? Do you dare to kneel in front of Junjia's memorial tablet and ask him personally what he thinks? The more Lin clan member listened, the paler her face became. By the time she reached the last few sentences, she was on the verge of collapsing. She said incoherently, "Mother, I was wrong. I don't remember anything. No, if I knew earlier. It's not like that, I thought." Her mind was in a mess. She realized that everything she said was inappropriate and wrong. Furthermore, her son was looking at her with an extremely cold gaze. She almost collapsed on the spot. It wasn't that she didn't care about her son. It was just that she woke up too late. There was already no turning back. Yu Miaoqi wished that she could turn into a wisp of smoke and disappear. She originally thought that she could live a good life by relying on the Lin clan in the future. Who knew that the Lin clan was so unreliable that it was far beyond her imagination? It was to the point that they were loathed by everyone. Now that they were tied together with the Lin clan, it was no wonder that they couldn't gain any advantage in front of Old Madam and Yu Pinyin. Yu Siyu's expression was wooden. She didn't feel much about these things. Yu Xiang was already furious. She slightly withdrew from her brother's embrace. She looked at the Lin clan and sneered, "Mother, what did you think? Did you think that I embezzled all these things and framed the old ancestor? Why didn't you read all the account books before coming to make trouble for me? The old ancestor's dowry couldn't be redeemed. These years, the little surplus in the fu was used to redeem your dowry." Look carefully at this account book for the 23rd year of Chongkong. The 5 prosperous shops and the 100,000 taels of silver have all been returned. You came here to make trouble for the old ancestor. It's really disdainful. She pulled out the account book with the words 23rd year of Chongkong on the back and fiercely smashed it on the Lin clan's head. The Lin clan cried out in pain. Suppressing her shock, she replied, "Let's not talk about this first. Why do you take 200 taels of silver from my shop in the west of the city every month? After 4 years, it should be close to 10,000 taels of silver, right?" Yu Xiang shook her head and said word by word, "Mother, go ask youngest uncle where the 200 taels of silver went. Youngest uncle's family is having a hard time, So they come to the Fu every month to ask for money. I have 20 taels of silver every month. I can't afford it, and I'm in charge of the central treasury. I can't embezzle, so I can only take 200 taels of silver from your dowry. If mother feels that it's wrong, you can go ask youngest uncle for it yourself. The Lin clan was dumbfounded. Yu Miaoqi lowered her head even more, and the shock in her heart grew even more. She never expected that not only was the Lin clan unreliable, her maternal uncle's family was even more unreliable. Every month, they came to her niece's house to ask for money. How shameless were they? Didn't they just say that their wealth was comparable to that of a country? Yu Xiang continued to ridicule. Mother didn't even finish reading the account book before pushing all the blame onto me. She immediately went to the old ancestor to reason with me. This is clearly trying to trample on my dignity. If one or two unpleasant words were to spread, I wouldn't be able to establish myself in the capital anymore. I find it strange. Older brother and I are clearly your biological children. Why do you only care about second sister and treat us like we don't exist? Who exactly was the one who accompanied you for 14 years? If you cared about your mother-daughter relationship and came to ask me in private, or patiently read the account book, how could today's farce have occurred? Mother's actions are truly chilling. She pretended to be sad as she wiped the corners of her eyes and burrowed into her older brother's embrace to seek comfort. Didn't the Lin clan refuse to acknowledge her? She just had to use their mother-daughter relationship to discuss the Lin clan. Yu Pinyin tightly hugged his younger sister, and his lips quickly slid across her forehead. When he looked at the Lin clan again, the trace of warmth in his eyes completely turned into a murderous aura. He said word by word, I originally thought that we were a family, and that we should help each other in times of crisis. But it turns out that mother didn't think that way. Since that's the case, let's open up all the account books and settle them clearly today, so that we won't be confused in the future. What did he mean by your and mine? Was he planning to draw a clear line between them? The Lin clan didn't have enough time to regret. They could only clutch at their sleeves and feel so sad that they couldn't speak. Yu Miaoqi suddenly knelt in front of the hall and kowtowed as she said, Grandmother, please forgive mother this time. Mother only did this because she was muddle-headed. In the future, brother will also have a share of mother's dowry. It's worth it to spend more for brother. You're right, Yu Xiang lowered her head to look at her, her eyes full of calculation and ridicule. Brother also has a share of mother's dowry. But look at how mother is behaving. She doesn't care about brother at all, and only treats you as the apple of her eye. You've just returned, and you're already causing such a ruckus. In a few years, won't you have all of mother's dowry in your hands? That won't do. Yu Miaoqi didn't expect her to speak so bluntly. Halfway through kowtowing, she froze and simply couldn't find the words to refute. The matriarch's eyebrows twitched, and she immediately said, Xiang'er is right. In a few years the Lin clan won't be able to see Yandere anymore. Lin clan, if you really know your wrongs, then divide the dowry among the children in front of me. You can't favor only one. Didn't you say that I pocketed your dowry? Fine, then I'll openly swallow it today. It's better than feeding it all to this ingrate Yu Miaoqi. Yu, who was sitting on the stool and pretending to be a wooden puppet, instantly became spirited. The Lin clan looked at the stern-looking matriarch, then looked at their cold-looking son. They only felt that their hearts, livers, spleens, lungs, and kidneys were being crushed. The pain was unbearable. She wasn't willing to split it. If she didn't split it, she was afraid that today wouldn't be kind. Who told her to be so wrong this time? Yu Miaoqi didn't show it on her face, but in reality her heart was burning. She felt like she was about to vomit blood. The author has something to say. My fever has gone down, but my muscles have been sore for the past 2 days, and I want to sleep all the time. Then today I dreamt that I fell into the latrine pit and fell twice. Then I climbed out and kept wiping myself with paper towels. The Lord of Zhou interpreted my dream and said that I'm going to make a fortune. Ha ha. Thank you to my rich friends and thank you to all the friends who supported the original version. Moi. Chapter 60. Yu Pinyin didn't say anything. He only played with his sister's white and tender hand while glancing indifferently at the Lin clan. He saw that she lowered her head and didn't say anything for a long time. He was afraid that she was very unwilling. His originally cold heart had already lost all feeling. How could he be interested in such a small dowry? He only wanted to measure his worth in the Lin clan's heart. The Lin clan didn't disappoint him. They chose to abandon him every time. Mama Kim stood at the door. When she saw the frost gradually gathering in Master Ho's eyes, she was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. She wanted nothing more than to run over and press the Lin clan down to agree. What was a small dowry? Could it be more important than Master Ho's heart? With Master Ho's protection, what couldn't they want in the future? Madam really didn't know how to think. The Lin clan wasn't reluctant to give Yu Pinyin, but they were reluctant to give Yu Siyu and Yu Xiang. They couldn't help but look at the matriarch with pleading eyes. Before the matriarch could speak, Yu Pinyin chuckled softly. Old ancestor, there's no need. I don't dare to take her things. Otherwise, I'll be blamed in the future. Yu Xiang immediately objected. How can that be? Older brother deserves it. How can I let Yu Miaoqi take advantage of it? Yu Pinyin pinched her cheek and smiled. All right, Xiang, there's no need to bicker with them. What do you want that older brother can't get for you? The pearls and corals of the Eastern Sea, the gems and spices of the Western regions, older brother can give it to you with both hands. It's better for her to keep those things for herself. It'll be easier for her to live in the future, right? Such arrogant words might have been laughed at by others, but they were very convincing when they came from Yu Pinyin's mouth. He was the most powerful person in the Great Han Kingdom aside from the Emperor and Crown Prince. Obtaining a promise from him was more valuable than any treasure. Yu Miaoqi and Yu Siyu were so jealous that their eyes turned red. Yu Xiang curled her lips and complained, "That's not the same. That was originally yours. I just feel sorry for you. You're obviously my biological daughter, so why are you treating her so differently? If it had not been for you, the Marquis household would have fallen, and her dowry would have been plundered. She enjoys the good life you give her. What right does she have to stand here and shout at you? We didn't misappropriate her dowry on purpose. She is also a member of the Marquis household. Shouldn't she do something for the Marquis household?" The members of the Lin clan were so embarrassed that they couldn't raise their heads, but they couldn't refute her. Just as they were feeling conflicted, they saw their son standing up with Yu Xiang in his arms. His smile was like a spring breeze, and his tone was extremely gentle. "Good Xianger, I know you love your brother dearly." Her brother was an 8-foot-tall man. How could he covet her little things? It's good that he didn't take them. It'll save us the trouble in the future. He glanced meaningfully at Yu Miaoqi. Yu Xiang immediately stopped talking. She leaned on his shoulder and waved goodbye to the matriarch. Knowing that the siblings were impatient, the matriarch didn't urge them to stay. She sent them out, then turned to look at the stupefied members of the Lin clan. "Since Yandere and Xianger aren't willing to take your things, you should share some with Siyu. When your children get married, whether it's the betrothal gift or dowry, it's your duty as the matriarch of the household to prepare everything. Don't you think so? Do you only want to hold power and not fulfill your duties? Then you should return the spoils to Xianger as soon as possible. You can't even compare to a child who hasn't reached marriageable age. All the salt and rice you've eaten all these years has gone into a dog's stomach." The Lin clan was so embarrassed that she wanted to die. She didn't dare to raise her head, but she still bit her lip and refused to let go. Yu Siyu's mother had destroyed her dreamlike beautiful married life. It was already merciful that she didn't throw Yu Siyu to the countryside to fend for herself. How could she give her a dowry? Yu Miaoqi understood the situation. She struggled to get up from the ground and gently tugged at the Lin clan's sleeve. The matriarch didn't care whether the Lin clan was willing or not. Since she dared to cause trouble at the door today, she had to dig out a few pieces of her flesh before she could let her go. She opened the account book and pointed with her fingertips. West of the city, Woolly Tile, Yuqing Street, Ningwang Street, and the 4 shops in Flowerbird Lane are all given to Siyu. In addition, there are 3 fields in Shanghe Village, Xiahe Village, Yangjiaping Village, and 200 hectares of fertile land. All of them are Siyu's dowry. In another year or so, Siyu will be leaving the house. The Lin clan was furious. Even if she hadn't been at home for a long time, she still remembered that these shops and fields were the most profitable. The other shops and fields added together couldn't compare to these few. If she really gave them to Yusiu, it would be equivalent to digging out a piece of her flesh. Her blood wouldn't stop flowing. She was about to refute when Yusiu quickly got up and bowed. She smiled and said, "Thank you, old ancestor. Thank you, mother. Siyu wouldn't dare to forget such a deep love." This was really a case of the fisherman benefiting from the fight between the snipe and the clam. She was about to go to heaven. It was rare for the matriarch to find her pleasing to the eye. She waved her hand and said, "All right, you can go back. When you get married, I will ask your mother to take out the title deed." Yusiu repeatedly agreed. She didn't even look at the Lin clan and hurriedly left, afraid that something would happen if she was too slow. Yu Miaoqi had just sat down when she knelt down again. She sincerely asked for forgiveness on behalf of her mother. She didn't expect that Yu Xiang would dig such a big hole to lure her into jumping in. No wonder she didn't fix Chongqing's deficit from 21 years ago. Instead, she casually left it there for others to investigate. It was also because she and the Lin clan were too anxious to deal with her. Otherwise, things wouldn't have ended up like this. It turned out that before she returned home, the Marquis household was in such a precarious situation, while the Lin clan was like an invisible person. They didn't care at all and didn't ask about it. Her personality was truly cowardly to the extreme. Even Chen Shi was 100 times stronger than her. Yu Miaoqi kowtowed as she reflected on herself. She felt that she still had many things to understand. She couldn't act rashly like she did today. The Lin clan saw her kowtow loudly, and their hearts ached. They quickly pulled her up and knelt down themselves. What the matriarch hated the most was the way the two of them displayed their deep affection for their daughter. If you still had motherly love for your child, what have you been doing these past 14 years? When Yandere was poisoned to death, you only nodded and said, "I understand." Who are you acting for right now? Not only did the matriarch's expression not soften, it became even more gloomy. She sneered, "Stop kowtowing. I can't accept your great courtesy." Yandere wasn't willing to accept your things, which means he wasn't willing to acknowledge you. Are you happy now? In the future you'll just guard your dowry and Yu Miaoqi. You'll only have a pile of dead things and her left. Oh, that's not right. You still have Junjie's memorial tablet, but you threw Yandere to the side for 14 years. Do you dare to kneel in front of Junjie's grave and personally ask him what he thought of you? Assisting your husband, teaching your children, working hard to run the household, what have you done? Just wait until Junjie comes to settle this debt with you in the Yellow Springs. The Lin clan repeatedly kowtowed and admitted their wrongs. When they heard these words, their bodies couldn't help but stiffen. Their hearts felt like they were being twisted by a knife. Yu Miaoqi felt both embarrassed and resentful. There was another hidden meaning in the matriarch's words, which was to completely separate her and the Lin clan from Yu Pinyin. She would live with the Lin clan and have nothing to do with Yu Pinyin in the future. How could this be? Didn't her status in her husband's family still depend on Yu Pinyin? Without her maternal family's support, how could she establish herself in her husband's family? The two of them looked at each other with their foreheads pressed against each other. They could see the complete joy in each other's eyes. "Brother, do you really like it? Don't you feel sad that the Lin clan treated you like that?" After hesitating for a long time, Yu Xiang slowly opened her mouth. "I don't feel anything." Yu Pinyin's tone was indifferent. He then asked, "What about you? Are you sad?" "I don't feel anything either. The only person in this world who can make me sad is brother. If one day brother doesn't want me anymore, I'll die of sadness." When she said the word die, she deliberately emphasized it. This wasn't an exaggerated figure of speech. It was death in the truest sense. She was originally a soul from another world. Her roots were not in the soil of the Han dynasty, but in Yu Pinyin's soul. If Yu Pinyin abandoned her, she would naturally wither away slowly. Yu Pinyin's eyes darkened. He said hoarsely, "How can that be? Even if I don't want my own life, I won't abandon Xiang'er. I've said it before, Xiang'er is my lifeblood." Yu Xiang whispered into his ear, "Brother, you're also my lifeblood. You're the person I like the most in this world." After saying this, she quickly kissed him lightly on the cheek. Then she pursed her lips and smiled. Yu Pinyan's heart was greatly shaken, but his expression was very calm. He ordered in a low voice, "Kiss me again. Otherwise, brother will throw you away." Yu Xiang smiled brightly as she leaned in for another kiss. However, she didn't expect him to suddenly turn his head. The kiss that was supposed to land on his cheek slid past the corner of his lips. Yu Xiang didn't care, but Yu Pinyan deeply remembered the soft touch and scalding temperature on his lips. His eyes instantly became as deep as the sea. Lu, who was following behind the two, felt perilous waves rise in her heart. Although she was a young girl who didn't know much about human affairs, she gradually felt that something was off. This was because Master Ho's gaze towards her master became more and more passionate every day. It was practically enough to make people burn. Every servant in the residence must memorize them, and there will be a spot check every once in a while. If you can't memorize them, your monthly salary will be deducted. Look, she even increased the wages of the servants who poured the night incense, worked the night watchman, and did the laundry to the level of a third-ranked maid. She was simply a wastrel. She also organized everyone into small groups, and selected a group leader to supervise the group members. If they make more than 3 mistakes, their monthly salary will be deducted. If they make more than 5 mistakes, regardless of whether they have children or signed a living contract, they will all be kicked out of the residence. Also, the person in charge of purchasing goods needs to be replaced every 2 months. If they are removed from this job before they even start, what great things can they accomplish? If the servants take 2 days off every 7 days, won't there be no one to serve the masters when they need to? Mama Kim complained non-stop. Finally, she concluded, Miss 3 isn't managing the Marquis household at all. There are so many rules that can't be overstepped. She's managing the military camp, causing the residence to be filled with complaints. Second miss, you can't follow in her footsteps. Otherwise, you'll be scolded to death. There were indeed people in the residence who were dissatisfied, but most of them were steward mamas like Mama Kim who couldn't get any benefits. The rest of the servants all respected Yu Xiang. Even though steward mamas didn't dare to criticize Yu Xiang in the slightest. It should be known that she was the same as her brother. She didn't recognize her own family. She didn't care if you were a child of the house or not, or how hard you worked. If you made a mistake, she would punish you. If you made a big mistake, she would beat you. If you didn't repent, she would drive you out. 4 years had passed, and the Marquis household was under her control like an iron bucket. Yu Miaoqi could also see that Yu Xiang's methods were extremely shrewd and ruthless. She emphasized fairness in everything. She dealt with things according to the rules without showing any mercy. She also wouldn't make a wrong judgment. It could be said that she was a person who attached great importance to rules. As a result, the servants she trained were also very well behaved. They didn't slack off or deceive their superiors, and they also didn't step on the weak and flatter the strong. However, once they were well behaved, Yu Miaoqi couldn't do anything. She didn't even know where to start training a few trusted subordinates. Therefore, even if she knew that Yu Xiang's management regulations were good things, she still had to break them. Because only by breaking the balance and supporting her own trusted subordinates could she gain a firm foothold in the Marquis household. She was no longer as naive as she was when she first came here. She didn't think that she could live a good life by relying on the Lin clan. The Lin clan wanted to escape at a critical moment. This kind of cowardly character was truly abhorrent. It was no wonder that the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were at odds with each other, and the mother and son broke apart. Because of this, it was impossible for her to take root in the Marquis household by currying favor with the matriarch and Yu Pinyan. After today, they would only compare her with the Lin clan. Then they would ignore her, alienate her and treat her coldly. When she was old enough, they would send her far away. Her status would be even lower than that of Yu Xiu. The situation was very unfavorable for Yu Miaoqi. The only thing she could do was to firmly grasp the power in her hands and make herself strong before she married. Then, she would find a husband with a prominent background. When she reached the peak of her wealth in the future, she would definitely make the matriarch and Yu Pinyan regret it. She would also make Yu Xiang pay back everything they owed her. After sending away Mama Kim, Yu Miaoqi pondered for more than 2 hours. She also wrote down new regulations. Only then did she finally get a good night's sleep. Compared to the main room, which was deserted, the small courtyard in the west wing was very lively. The housekeepers came one after another to ask Miss 3 what they should do now that there was a new master in the residence. They had already heard rumors that the second Miss and Miss 3 did not get along. They had fought several times as soon as they returned. The Lin clan hated Miss 3 even more. If the two of them were in charge, the situation would be very unfavorable for Miss 3. But behind Miss 3 stood Master Ho. Whether or not she was in charge, no one could bully her. On the contrary, as long as she showed a little bit of interest, the housekeepers would be more than happy to obstruct the second Miss and the Lin clan. They would help her take back the power in charge. Although they were very dissatisfied with Yu Xiang at the beginning, as long as they did well, Yu Xiang would give them extra money every month. During the holidays, he would also give them generous bonuses. Compared to the money they could get from the corners, it was a little less. But this money was taken with peace of mind. It was taken honorably, and it didn't bite their hands. Instead, their lives were more comfortable than before. If it was suddenly someone else and the rules were changed, they would be at a loss. They would all run to Miss 3 to make decisions. Yu Xiang lazily leaned on the couch, holding a miscellaneous book in his hand. He waved his hand and said, "Don't ask me for advice. In the future, these things won't be under my control. Don't forget the rules in the residence. Bury your heads in your work, and don't let anyone catch you doing something wrong. That's the right thing to do. Leave, I'm going to sleep." He covered his mouth and yawned as he spoke. Don't let anyone catch you doing something wrong? That was true. A new broom sweeps clean. Who knew what the second Miss was thinking? She wasn't like Miss 3. She was fair and square in everything and did things according to the rules. If she didn't like someone, she might find an excuse to remove them and replace them with her own people. The days ahead were going to be difficult. The stewards and mamas understood the lesson. They excused themselves and quietly left the room. They hadn't met Yu Miaoqi yet, but their impression of him had already worsened. They also became more vigilant. When Yu Pinyin returned home, his sister was already asleep. Her small mouth was slightly open, revealing a little lilac tongue. From time to time, she would mumble a few words in her sleep. Her appearance was indescribably lovable and cute. He sat by the couch and stared at her for a long time. He only quietly left when the matriarch sent someone to invite him. When he left, he didn't forget to move his sister's exposed arm under the blanket and gently rubbed her dark red full lips. In the main courtyard, the matriarch was waiting solemnly. When she saw her grandson arrive, she didn't even smile. She bluntly said, "Yandere, I didn't take back your mother's right to manage the household. I'm hoping that she will make a big mistake so that I can expel her from the Marquis household. I've endured for 14 years. I've endured enough." She disobeyed her parents. She rebelled against virtue. She was jealous. She caused chaos in the household. She spoke too much. You see, she's already broken 3 of the 7 rules. If she sincerely repents this time and can conscientiously manage the household well, I'll spare her. If she doesn't repent and causes trouble, I'll have to send her a letter of divorce. Yandere, what do you think? Yu Pinyin sat down and leisurely sipped his tea. He said unconcernedly, "If she doesn't do anything wrong, no one can do anything to her. If she makes a mistake, she'll naturally be punished according to the rules. Your grandson will have no objections. What does the Lin clan count for? It makes no difference whether she's in the Fu or not." The matriarch nodded and said tiredly, "Good. It's good that you can get over it. You've never received a bit of love from her since you were young. Now you don't need to protect her. You don't owe her anything. Just you wait. Yu Miaoqi has a big heart, but her life is thinner than paper. Sooner or later she'll cause trouble. I'm not afraid of causing trouble. I just can't let her harm Xiang'er. I often have to run errands outside, so I'll have to trouble the old ancestor to look after me," Yu Pinyin earnestly requested. The matriarch didn't sense anything strange. After putting aside her worries, she smiled and waved her hand. "Listen to what you're saying. In my heart, Xiang'er is no different from my own granddaughter. I'll protect her even if you don't say it. But you're thinking too much. Although Yu Miaoqi is a bit scheming, she's still a far cry from that little tiger Xianger. It's fine if she doesn't have any wild thoughts. But if she does, Xianger will definitely slap her face until it's swollen. Yu Pinyin lowered his eyes and smiled when he thought of his little sister's threatening appearance. By the time Yu Miaoqi woke up, it was already the afternoon. She didn't have time to massage her throbbing temples and immediately got up to look for the Lin clan. She had them quickly gather all the senior servants. Let's wait a few more days. We've just angered your grandmother, and now we're in a hurry to take power. What will your grandmother think of us? The Lin clan was very hesitant. Yu Miaoqi sneered, no matter how long we wait, grandmother and big brother's opinion of us won't change. That's why we have to prop up the family and use our actions to change their opinion of us. Mother, you have to pull yourself together. Father is still watching you from heaven. Hearing the last sentence, the Lin clan immediately agreed and sent someone to inform the senior servants. Yu Miaoqi secretly sighed in relief. The Lin clan was extremely easy to control. This was the fortune she had after returning home. With the Lin clan in front of her, it would be easier for her to act from behind. She had always been a person with great ability to act. No matter how big a blow she received, she could quickly pull herself together. The matriarch and Yu Pinyin were tired of her, but she definitely wouldn't be like the Lin clan and feel sorry for herself. Instead, it would arouse her ambition and fighting spirit. If others weren't reliable, she would work hard to make herself stronger. No matter what, she refused to believe that she couldn't even compare to a lowly child. Moreover, that lowly child was a cripple with a broken leg. The author has something to say. Thank you to my rich friends, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original novel. Moi. She knew that Yu Miaoqi didn't make any big moves and only abolished 2 rules that were neither light nor heavy. Thus, she sighed to Mama Ma. I thought she was very scheming, but she's also short-sighted. These 2 abolished rules were indeed insignificant, but she didn't think too deeply about it. Those servants were under control all year round, so they had a clear division of labor. She suddenly removed the power to control them, so the division of labor was also unclear. There was no conclusion as to who was responsible for this matter and who was responsible for that matter. Wouldn't this make the servants anxious? You push me, I push you. No one can do the work. Sooner or later there will be chaos in the fu. For example, if you suddenly let go of the power that was holding on to it, it would instantly relax and inevitably fall down. Management is also a kind of knowledge. Its principles are similar to governing a country. Governing a country strictly means that the world is clear and bright. Governing a country is biased and chaotic. In the end, Yu Miaoqi can't compare to Xiang'er. Mama Ma agreed, that's natural. After all, Miss Xiang'er was personally taught by Yu and Master Ho. Ordinary people can't compare to her. The matriarch's mood eased a little. She muttered in a low voice, in the end, the family Shun is a businessman. His knowledge is shallow. The children he taught are really unpresentable. Mama Ma nodded in agreement. What the 2 didn't know was that it wasn't that the family Shin didn't know how to discipline, but that he didn't dare to discipline. Just looking at Shin Yuanqi, he was extremely outstanding among thousands of people. In the end, Yu Miaoqi was held too high by the family Shun. He accidentally killed himself and became what he was today. Because Yu Miaoqi's methods were gentle and gradual, and she secretly looked for trusted aides who could support her, the Marquis household didn't cause any trouble for the next half a month. She gradually relaxed. On this day, Yu Siyu, who had been hiding in the house and didn't go out, suddenly came to the door with many gifts. Yu Miaoqi smiled and let her into the house. There wasn't the slightest bit of ill will between them. Yu Siyu exchanged a few words and stammered, younger sister. It's not that elder sister covets mother's dowry. It's just that I don't dare to refuse elder sister's gift. In that situation, if I insisted on refusing, wouldn't the old ancestor be even angrier? I had no choice. Mother doesn't blame me, right? How could the Lin clan not blame her? Later, when Yu Miaoqi learned about the value of the shops and fields, her heart bled. She wanted to eat Yu Siyu alive. Yu Miaoqi lowered her eyes and drank her tea. When she spoke again, her tone was indescribably warm and cheerful. How could mother blame elder sister? Mother has neglected elder sister a lot these years. This time she's done her best to add to elder sister's dowry. When the time comes, I'll also prepare a generous gift for elder sister to complete our sisterly relationship. Yu Siyu was greatly moved. She held her hand and praised. Younger sister is still the most considerate. You're not like Yu Xiang, who's cold-hearted and cold-hearted. Yu Miaoqi covered her mouth and chuckled. The two continued to chat. When they were about to leave, Yu Siyu said, I heard that younger sister is now in charge of the household. If you're too busy, I can help. Younger sister also knows that I'll be getting married in about a year and a half. It's time for me to learn how to manage the household. Elder sister hasn't learned before? Daughters of ordinary families start learning when they're 7 or 8 years old. Yu Miaoqi pretended to be surprised. Yu Siyu's eyes were filled with tears. She pointed to the west wing and then pointed to the main courtyard. She grumbled in a low voice. One is overbearing and savage, and the other is selfish and biased. I'm struggling to survive in the cracks. How can I learn real skills? I'm just passing my days in vain. Good elder sister. Then younger sister will have to rely on you in the future. Yu Miaoqi agreed without hesitation. After sending off Yu Siyu, her face immediately sank. She sent the maidservants away and called Mama Kim over. Have the people you sent to Yangzhou sent back any news? When can they get rid of Yu Siyu? I think she's really an eyesore. After the farce in the main courtyard, Yu Miaoqi didn't bother to pretend to be virtuous and gentle anymore. She completely revealed the crafty nature she had developed in the family shun. Mama Kim didn't feel disappointed. Instead, she was happy to see it happen. Madam was unreliable. Second young miss should be more unyielding. She smiled and said, replying second young miss, I just received news that Fong family's mother and son have been persuaded and are rushing to the capital. They should arrive in 7 or 8 days. 7 or 8 days. Don't make any mistakes. Yu Miaoqi rubbed her forehead. Mama Kim quickly waved her hand. There won't be any mistakes. That mother and son are in dire straits right now. They don't even have a place to shelter from the wind and rain, let alone a full meal. They're about to die. How can they not hold on to Yu Siyu, this life-saving straw? They're even more anxious than us. That's good. When this matter is completed, I'll reward you handsomely. Also, I asked you to find some trustworthy servants to support them. Have you made any progress? I still need to observe for a while. Young miss, don't worry. The power is in your hands. We don't need to spend any effort to find them. Naturally, someone will come to your door. That's true. The two were discussing when they heard someone report from outside the room. Second young miss, Chun Mei and Dong Shui request an audience. Yu Miaoqi looked at Mama Kim with an inquiring gaze. Mama Kim lowered her voice and introduced. These two were originally given to Master Ho by the old madam. For some reason, they were sent to the sewing room by Miss 3. It's been almost 4 years, but they haven't even seen Master Ho's face. Master Ho doesn't care, so the old madam won't stand up for them. They see that you're the head of the household and are begging you to come. After all, you're an unmarried girl. It's not good for you to intervene. It's better to let Madam make the decision. Just now I said that you don't need to worry. See, they came to find you on their own. Yu Miaoqi nodded slightly. After pondering for a moment, she said, tell mother to transfer them back to eldest brother's courtyard. One of them will help him with his grooming and the other will help him with his brush and ink. Eldest brother has already been crowned, so he can't not have anyone to warm his bed for him. Wouldn't it be a joke if word got out? She should find some beautiful concubines to distract Yu Pinyin. It would be best if he quickly got married. If he had wives and concubines, he would have a house full of children. How would he have the mind to care about Yu Pinyin? At that time, even the old madam wouldn't be able to take care of her. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that it was feasible. She pulled on Mama Kim, who was about to leave, and asked, is eldest brother engaged? He is. Mama Kim nodded. He was betrothed before he was born. The other party is the legitimate daughter of Duke Jingguofu. However, she's currently in mourning. So the marriage has been delayed. Mama Kim spent all day with the Lin clan. She had also lost her power, so her eyes and ears were naturally not as sharp as before. She didn't receive any news that the old madam and Yu Pinyin wanted to break off the engagement. Not only her, but most of the servants also didn't know of their master's plans. They thought that Chang Yafu was going to marry into the family as soon as he left the service. Yu Miaoqi thought for a moment, then asked, "How long will she be in mourning?" "Not long. She'll be able to leave the service by the end of next month." Mama Kim counted on her fingers. "Okay, I understand. Take Chunmei and Dong Shui to mother." Yu Miaoqi sent Mama Kim away and couldn't help but smile in relief. Then she thought about how the new daughter-in-law would be in charge of the family's finances after marrying into the family. Her face darkened as she pondered how to deal with it. However, as long as the Lin clan didn't let go and the daughter-in-law couldn't forcefully snatch it away, then she could take a few more beautiful concubines for Yu Pinyin. The legitimate daughter of Duke Jingguofu wouldn't have the time to care about anything else. Yu Miaoqi leaned back in her chair. Many thoughts spun in her mind, and her expression slowly changed from hesitation to determination. The author has something to say. Thank you to my rich friends, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original version. Moi! You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.